Good evening, everyone. I'm Vice Mayor Scott Rhodes. The mayor is in Hollywood, Florida for the Florida League of City-State conference this evening, and so I'll be running the meeting. Councilman French is out of the area, and he won't be able to attend either, so it's the three remaining council members tonight. And this is a City Council workshop on the budget, and we'll get started and with Councilman Bowman.
Please rise for a moment of silence. God bless our troops everywhere around the world. Please pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is only I think the second time I've done this, so I'll have to wing it. Kind of mirroring probably how the mayor runs most of the meetings. So, again, it's the City Council workshop, August 12th, 2012, at 6 p.m. And we're going to discuss the budget for 2012-2013 budget here. We have it broken down into 4 categories: fire department presentation, millage rate, budget options, general fund budget summary, and departmental backup. So we'll divide it into those 4 categories. I think if we go through each one, we'll have the presentation. We'll discuss it amongst the council, and then we'll have a public comment on it also. Work it through like that, and I'll turn it over to Ann at this time.
Thank you and welcome. The Fire Department Chief Don Hughes is going to give a presentation of current levels of service and a discussion on the feasibility of implementing elements of the CAPEG report.
Good evening, how are you? And to kind of get started here, over the last few months, as we've been going through the processes for looking at the budget, looking at a variety of options, one of the things that became abundantly clear is that the City Council has asked its staff, and I'm going to say for me as the fire chief, asked the fire chief, for us to review what we do, the way that we do it, and determine are there ways that we can maximize cost efficiencies and yet maintain the current levels of service. Not necessarily cut service, but maintain those services. So over the last few months, as myself and staff, and we've been talking, truth of the matter is, for the last 3 to 5 months, we really have been actively engaged at evaluating what we do, why we do it, how we do it, and to determine are there ways that we can reduce costs in the future. So with that said, let's kind of go through this a little bit, and you guys have some handouts there. My slides will match up fairly closely to it. But for us to understand where we are, we kind of need to understand what the history is. How did we get to where we're at, and why do we do the things that we do? The fire department structure for us is a typical paramilitary organization, and you have seen the organizational charts enough, but this is partially for the audience, is that myself as the fire chief, who also serves as the emergency management director coordinator for the city. I have an administrative assistant. We have an operations commander that's very similar to what Brad Hodge would be, and not only is he an operations side, he is also our city's fire marshal, fire inspector. And then our organization is divided up into 3 shifts. Each shift works a 24-hour tour. They're on for 24 hours and they're off for 48, hence the reason why we have 3 specific shifts. The shifts are currently configured with having 5 people assigned to shift, one of them being a company officer, 2 to 3 others, depending, are paramedics and EMTs. All of our shifts have been configured that we try to maintain 3 paramedics per shift. That gives us the latitude for people to be off duty for a variety of reasons and without trying to generate overtime. So this is how we had been established and staffed in the past. Oops, hit the wrong button. Let's talk just a little bit about call history, and let me talk about the numbers here. We go back in and we look, and I'm just giving this a perspective from 2001. Our call numbers ranged at the beginning about upper 900s, and last year for 1,105 emergencies. I know that there has been some evaluations concerning what do we outline as an emergency. I'm one of these individuals that I don't necessarily believe in padding the numbers. These are 911 calls. This is not representative of all the activities that we do, whether it be people who come in for blood pressures, whether it be public service, whether it be building inspections, whether it be pre-fire planning that we do at an officership level for looking at a commercial building and determining ways of how we're going to fight that fire. All of those things are activities, but I never reported them as part of an emergency. I wanted to talk about what the true issue is. And so for 2011, we were down about 3 to 4% in our numbers at 1,105 911 emergencies. And I'm going to hit that button again. So let's talk about what we do in those 911 calls, because the bulk of the emergencies that we respond to are EMS. This is ubiquitous to all fire departments in Brevard County and in the nation. And the spread of percentage that we run that is EMS related averages between 71 and 73%. And again, that's a pretty common set of numbers for any fire department, that the bulk of their emergency responses are medical related. 3% is what we call hazardous materials, and hazardous materials can be anything from a barrel leak that has come up on shore, natural gas line cuts is our number one, and LP tanks. Not the huge hazardous material that you might see on some movie, very simple stuff, but they still fall in that category of hazardous materials. About 12% of our calls, we get this other category, and sometimes that can be a service call. It could be somebody locked inside of the elevator, but these are just kind of the breakdown. But the other thing, though, is when we look at our organization, the fire part of it, structure fires, it is not the bulk of what we do. We know that. And for last year, it averaged about 7% of our total call volume. Last year, we had what we lined out was 11 working structure fires. Now, that definition's a little ambiguous, and I give that. But out of those fires, these were buildings that actually had some fire involvement in it. Out of that 11, were they towering infernos? No. The majority of the incidents that we have are what we call room and content events, meaning a bedroom, a kitchen, a dining room, something localized within the structure is what is involved. And the second part that we see in our structure fire events is typically what we call attic fires. And again, you can just kind of understand the challenges that we've had in the past years. So this is kind of a breakdown of the type of calls we go to. So I asked the question, why are we staffed the way that we are? Well, we're going back and we have to look at what our critical missions are. What are the critical service needs that the community needs, or what we believe that the community needs in order to meet their expectations when they dial 911? I go back and I look at what we do, and I can break it down into 3 simple categories as far as our mission critical needs there. And that's advanced life support. That's the paramedic services that we provide. Fire protection and suppression. That's the reason why we call ourselves a fire department. Technical rescue, and I'm going to kind of build on this just a little bit here, and within that technical rescue component with specificity given is that confined space and trench rescue. Let me just define these, and because I've got an asterisk there, and this is important to understand. A confined space is, in our city, our stormwater lines. We have employees who work in those stormwater lines. And when they, or if they, God forbid, have an emergency, there is a level of service to provide, and we have went through grants and other ways to upgrade the services that we provide through grants, mainly so that we can take care of our own. I have the asterisk next to trench rescue, and people ask, well, what's that? Well, this is what goes on in Satellite Beach, and it's been happening the last couple of weeks. Excavation work is being done. May of 2011, we had an excavation work that was happening up by Satellite High School up in the North Drainage Project. Large hole that was cut. We had city employees, public works there working and supervising. We had the contractor there, and we had what we call our earth wall collapse. It crushed a construction worker, critically injuring him in ICU for over 30 days. The difference between that being a construction worker from a company and one of our employees was 10 feet. So from the standpoint of technical rescue, we are putting ourselves and upgraded our training and our equipment to be able to take care of our own in case an unforeseen emergency occurred there. Water rescue is part of that, and again, it was funded through grants, and for us, because we're a water community, and we do receive calls for that. So that's just our critical mission services that we look at, that we provide here. Back in well, actually before 2004, the fire department staffing was a 3-person shift with 2-person minimum staffing, meaning that at the end of the day, there was 2 people on the fire truck. The challenge that we ran into is that the required medical care that is necessary for critical patients, 1 medic and 1 EMT just flat could not get it done. We could not get the critical things done because that patient had so many things going on that we needed extra hands. Another challenge that we had, besides that we had the critical patients that we were unable to provide for, the challenge that we were looking at, and this was prior to 2004 for us, is that a critical patient that needs an extra set of hands in the back of the ambulance, Satellite Beach Fire Department would have to provide a paramedic or somebody to ride in the back of the ambulance with Brevard County, because they're staffed with 2, to provide essential patient care en route to the hospital. How often does that happen in Satellite Beach? About 60 or 70 times a year. It doesn't happen with every call, but there are patients that require an extra set of hands in the back of the ambulance. Prior to 2004, when we did our staffing change, what that meant was that not only were we out of service for other calls that were coming in while we were on this one, our medic would be in the back of the ambulance, going to the hospital, and we would be out of service as an entity for the time that it took for that patient to be delivered and that paramedic returned back to the city. Of course, some will say, well, Don, did we really need to go in? Well, the answer to that question is yes, because there are some patients who require that extra set of skilled hands in the back of the ambulance. And it becomes a judgment call for us, but we're looking at that patient and their needs right there. So with that said, oops,
Chief, just a second. When you had to go, when you had to send your paramedic in and you were off, you couldn't handle the city. We do have agreements with other fire departments, do we not, to cover? Well,
oh, absolutely, and we do.
So we're not uncovered.
Not uncovered in the sense of being uncovered, but delayed response in the sense of being uncovered. So that's a good point, and I'm actually going to articulate that later too. So the next challenge that I already talked about the going in. Our next challenge that we faced was what we call concurrent calls or dual emergencies. This happens quite often in our community, more so than some will like to believe. But when we were staffed with only 1 unit on duty, there would be times that we would be on a cardiac related call or some other type of call on the south end of the city, and moments later a cardiac arrest or some other critical incident is happening on the north end of the city. And there is a delayed response in getting to them. And the challenge that we ran into is that there would be people who are in dire need of medical services, and instead of them receiving the 3 to 4 minute response that we would give normally through the city, Brevard County would respond. The ambulance would respond from a further away location because they're already committed to the call that we're on, and we would have response times of 9 and 10 minutes. Is that a big deal? Well, if you broke your leg, no. If you're in respiratory arrest, yeah. You know? So those were the challenges that we were looking at as far as our service delivery. And so with that said, we went through the process of evaluating back in 2004 what we do. Another challenge that we had starting in 2002, and I'm going to talk about something here that has been somewhat controversial, but I want to provide clear definition of what was going on. In 2002, the state of Florida made some statutory changes. One of the statutory changes that occurred is that it required that in order for firefighters to enter a burning structure, and the term up there is called IDLH atmosphere, immediate death, life hazard to them, meaning that if somebody enters that atmosphere and they breathe it, they can die immediately. But it also meant if they're exposed to other types of fumes, and that medical emergency can occur 12 to 72 hours after that exposure. So with that said, the challenge that we ran into is that when this law was adopted and we were staffed less than 4 people, our challenge was that we would respond to structure fires and that we would have to wait 5 to 6 minutes on scene time prior to Brevard County arriving on scene so we can start fire suppression activities. Another challenge, and these are a series of challenges here. Can you give me a glass of water or a little bottle of water? Here, thank you. I'm just all dry in here. Another challenge that we had was that in that statutory change, for the first time ever, the state of Florida had adopted a minimum training standard to be a volunteer firefighter. That was the challenge that we had. And those changes were substantial, and I'm going to hit this in a little bit, but we went from not have a requirement to have any training at all for a volunteer firefighter to now that there was high training requirements, thank you, Harry, in order to be that firefighter. Well, as we began looking, and this happened in 2002, from 2002, 2003 to first part of 2004, we as an organization looked at multiple strategies to try to figure out how can we get firefighters to the scene faster. That was what we were trying to look for, the things that we were trying to do. We attempt to do that through changing and upgrading of our mutual aid agreements that we just updated with Brevard County. But the thing, I may have an agreement with them, but this is not Star Trek, and I cannot beam them there instantly. They have a 9-minute response time. Partially that response time is dispatching delays because of the multiple dispatch centers that exist in Brevard County. But that's the world that I live in. The next thing that we tried to do, not only by using mutual aid to help us meet that 4-person minimum on the fireground scene, the other thing that we tried to do was to recruit and retain local firefighters living in our community, and most importantly, train them and retain them. The theory, they live in the community, an emergency occurs, we can sound the activation alert, and those firefighters can either A, meet us at the station or B, at the fireground so that we can meet that. We attempted to do that. We went through a variety of things to do that, offering classes, scholarship programs, all these things, and it just never came to fruition because the things that were going on is that we would be at a structure fire, 2 or 3 people there, typically 2 because that was usually what was on duty, and we would be waiting another 5 to 6 minutes before we can start interior firefighting suppression. I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in a moment here, but just wanted to let you know why we are where we're at today. And in 2004, through much discussion, the decision was made to increase our staffing from a 2-person minimum firefighter to a 4-person minimum firefighter staffing configuration. And of those 4 people is that they would be cross-trained as EMTs and paramedics, which again is very common here in the Brevard County region there. So let's talk a little bit about our crew. That's where we're at. Let's talk about outcomes because as I said to you, there was an investment made into the fire department from the community. And though outputs are the things that we do, I'm focused on outcomes. In 2011, let's talk about our medical services that we provide. Paramedic level services. We had 1,105 calls last year. Of that, 784 were EMS related. Of the 784 calls, we had over 800 patient contacts. Why? Because sometimes vehicle crashes, believe it or not, have more than one victim that's there. Of our patients that we have, cardiac arrest is not an atypical thing that happens in the community. It doesn't happen every day, but it is not atypical. Myocardial infarctions, which are heart attacks, and listen, and this is a case where heart attacks, this is where the rubber meets the road as far as providing good quality care to our patients. Strokes, respiratory distress, and then I will tell you, yes, people do call us for tummy aches. And there they go right now. Now, we could debate whether or not people use 911 appropriately or not, but nonetheless, if they dial, we're required to respond with something. And we do attempt to do some call triaging to make sure we're matching the right resource up to what the emergency is. In Satellite Beach, our citizens have enjoyed a response time of their paramedic units of less than 4 minutes. As a matter of fact, we run about 3 minutes and 27 seconds average there. But if I want to take the average out and talk about fractionated response times, we are on scene 4 minutes or less 90% of the calls. That is pretty doggone good. Brevard County, an excellent organization. They're the ones that provide the transport services. That's their bailiwick. The closest ambulance that responds to us comes from the Sea Park area, but guess what? They don't hang out and wait only for Satellite Beach calls. They have calls as they cover South Cocoa Beach, Merritt Island, and they're back up to the Sun Tree area. So the next ambulance from that is down by Crown Plaza. Either way that you look at it, the ambulance response time averages 8 minutes. Do they get there faster than 8 minutes sometimes? Yes. Do they get there longer than 8 minutes? Yes. Last year, we've had response times from them as high as 20, 22 minutes. Not their fault. Things happen. Days are busy. All their ambulances have been dispatched out, and the closest unit is coming from the hospital area. Does that happen often? No. It's about 1 or twice a year does that happen. But an excellent organization. But 3-4 minute response from the fire department personnel, their paramedics on scene, about 8 minutes response time for the paramedics from the ambulance service. As I said to you, I am an outcomes-generated person. I am a data-driven individual. I don't look at outputs. Outputs are the calls that we go to. Outputs are the people that we send to the call. Outputs are the equipment that we give them with. But what good is it for me? I'm going to knock things over and break stuff here before I'm done. Thing done is water, huh? So, thanks, Dick. Thank you, Dick. We're looking at outcomes here, and let's talk a little bit about our outcomes, because for me and our organization, we use quality performance indicators. Specifically in EMS, medical calls, I look very closely at the quality performance indicators of cardiac arrest. Why do we pick that? Because that is the one incident where every critical skill that a paramedic does, every critical skill a paramedic does on any type of call, all of it happens on that one type of incident. So for us, let's measure the worst possible medical call there can be, and I think dying may be one of them. And so we measured that. Some of the indicators that we measure include response time. Some of the measures that indicators that we measure is crew size and configuration. Some of the things that we measure is the on-scene actions and the medical care provided. We look at basically 17 different performance indicators for our organization. When we go and we look at what the outcomes are, let me discuss this, and then let's open, and even have a little bit of discussion on this. The blue side of the screen, and some of you have seen this before, is our cardiac arrest return of pulses, meaning that we got pulses back on the patient at their house or the scene of their untimely death. The blue side was when we had 2-person minimum staffing. Our cardiac arrest return of pulses, 6%, 12%. 2002, we had a good year, 30-some-odd%. And you see the numbers that are there. That first green column that is there represents the 5-year average from 2000 to 2004. And our cardiac arrest return of pulse rates, 5-year average was 14%. The beginning of 2005 is when we had the staffing change, and I'm going to do it again, aren't I? The staffing change is that we immediately started seeing increases in our cardiac arrest return of circulation. 42%, 26%, 24%, 42%. Last year, a heck of a good year, 54% return of pulse rates. If I go back and look at my last 5 years of it, a 34 to 38% return of pulses. I doubled the number of patients that we were returning to pulses on. There has certainly been questions on whether or not maybe it's not the people, maybe it's the medication. You and I had a discussion about this May of last year. Maybe it's the medication that we provide. We changed something. No, that was a variable. You talked specifically about vasopressin and then the specificity of vasopressin combined with another drug. Yes, there were studies out there that initially said that that would increase cardiac return of pulse by 10 to 15%. Multiple studies after that found that the truth of the matter is it may have moved it 1 or 2%. But those were variables. Yes, have we added on new procedures since the staffing change? Yes. So what this articulates to me and should articulate to the community is that it's not one thing that gives us the rates that we have. It's the system of things that we provide. So this is how I look, and from quality performance indicator, if I'm doing this good, and by the way, that 38% I believe is 2.5 times the national average, when I look at that number and I'm saying we're doing that good for that critical patient, that tells me that every other thing that we do that is EMS related is spot on. And from the citizens in this community, there is no, the quality of care has never been a challenge for what we provide. And as a matter of fact, we've been viewed as oftentimes as being groundbreakers into new areas of EMS care. Let's talk a little bit about that dual response capability, because again, that was one of our challenges prior to 2004. The blue side representing the lower staffing level, the red side representing the higher staffing level. And you can see 66 concurrent calls, 94 concurrent calls, and you see that on the blue side. You see it on the red side from our staffing change where we went as high as 158 calls, my glasses aren't on, as far as concurrent calls. Let me explain what that is, concurrent calls. That is overlapping incidents. What this means is that of that number that you see there, by half is the actual number of extra calls that are, well, I said extra calls that are happening at the same time. So last year it was 136 overlapping incidents. Do my math here, but roughly 60 some odd of those were the actual incidents that were overlapping. Had we not had the staffing level and the dual EMS response capability, we would have had 60 patients average per year in our community that would have received either a delayed response from Satellite Beach Fire Department or would have gotten no response at all, because by the time we got there, the emergency was already over. So with that said, we began looking at the staffing change to be able to correct that problem. Again, talking about the concurrent issues. Let me just give you some, instead of a graph, let's just talk about it in real number sense. After our staffing increase in 2004, there's only been 5 incidents in that entire time that we haven't been able to respond to. Why did that happen? We were on a structure fire, or we were on the gasoline tanker fire. We were on some abnormal event that doesn't happen often, that is not an incident that's over an hour, is an incident that's not over for 2 to 3 hours. Had we not had the ability for dual response in the community, 426 emergencies would have occurred in the community and never received what I'm going to say is the excellent level of care because of delayed response. But that's a personal opinion on that. So I just wanted to put that in hard numbers. What does this mean to the community? Let's talk about critical mission number 2, and that is fire services, and that's why we call ourselves a fire department. Granted, it's only 7% of our calls, but it's the one thing that certainly generates community discussion. As I said to you, our profession is regulated. I was talking about the statutory change. Well, yes, we had the statutory change of Florida statute that was requiring a difference in our number of firefighters to be on scene in order to enter a structure fire. We're also regulated by the Insurance Service Organization, ISO, who evaluates departments to determine what are their capabilities, and they give the department a rating. That rating, lower the number the better, the higher the number the worst. That rating is one of the influences for your homeowner's property insurance. Is it a huge difference? I can't speak to that because every home has different things about it. Age of home, type of roof, and other things like that. But the insurance agency does use the ISO rating as one of the things for evaluation of what homeowner's insurance is going to be on the fire portion of that insurance. So again, all the things that we do. Now, here's that controversial part that seems to float up all the time, and it's certainly a decent discussion to have, and that is the question, is 2 in and 2 out, which is the term that we use for that statutory change for firefighters, is it law? Is it absolute law, or is it just something we would like to do, like some standard? No, the question is, it is absolutely statutory. We are one of the few states in the country that law exists. One of the few. It is in other states, it is a recommendation, it's a nice thing to do, but in the state of Florida, it is a mandatory thing to accomplish. And again, Florida Statute 633, and it is promulgated in Administrative Code 69A55. Let me kind of build on this a little bit. I've already talked about it some, but it says that there must be 4 state-certified firefighters on the scene prior to any 2 firefighters entering the structure. For those 2 firefighters that have gone inside that structure fire, there must be at least 2 firefighters on the outside equipped and ready to immediately provide rescue services if the 2 firefighters in the building come in trouble. The 2 firefighters outside the building, one of them can be the pump operator, the person that drove the truck and is running the pump. That person could be one of the 2 out. The incident commander All incidents have to have an incident commander, hence the reason why we have company officers. They can count as the second person outside the structure. Under no circumstance is one firefighter allowed to go into the structure with a hose. It must be at least two, and they must have communications not only amongst themselves as they're inside that structure, and that communications could be hear, touch, or some other visual signal, but they also have to have radio communications to the people on the outside of the building. So those are the two things that are absolutely mandatory. I went as far as to ask an opinion letter from the State Fire Marshal's office, who is the one that is responsible for the enforcement of this particular statute. And I did this opinion letter, this was August of last year is when we did this. And I asked a question, is 2 in, 2 out statutory? Here's the response. Under the statute 633, 2 in and 2 out was adopted under the administrative code. And in order for 2 firefighters to enter that hazardous atmosphere, there must be at least 2 firefighters outside the structure to render assistance. There are exceptions to that rule. One exception, that the fire is so small that it's not generating smoke. And this is from the response of the letter. This is what actually was typed in. Is that no smoke can be seen. Let me give you a visual reference for that. Your garbage can. A pot on the stove, a outlet in your house that is shorted out and it may producing a little bit of a flame but no real visible smoke. That's a representative example of what that means, and therefore anything else that's generating smoke, that is an atmosphere that has to have the 2 in and 2 out component. By no means did that statute require cities to have a minimum staffing level. That has never been the requirement. We have never said it was the requirement. It's just we have to have them on the scene before we can enter that structure. We followed the statute in 2002. We did. We just followed it the other way. Instead of being 2 in, we stayed out. That's how we followed the statute in 2002. We did not go inside that structure. We did not engage the fire from the inside the structure, which is tactically the way that we're supposed to do it. We would engage that fire from the outside of the structure, and with all frankness, we would just create a bigger problem and spread the fire. So what was happening for us is as we're waiting for units to arrive on scene, a fire that was manageable now has become a fire that is unmanageable. That was even though we had automatic aid agreements with Brevard County. Even though we attempted to have volunteer firefighters in the city ready and willing to respond. These were the challenges that we were running into. And without going through all the bullet points there, the last bullet point is the one that's most important. Virtually every structure fire that we went to after the statutory change, while we were waiting outside the structure, and let me just say this, we weren't standing there picking our nose. We were doing other activities that we could do. Virtually every structure had damage and it was a virtual loss. There was times that we had people literally screaming at us, why aren't you going into that fire? How do I respond? How does a firefighter respond? Do we say it's against the law? These were the challenges that we were facing. So again, now we have EMS as an issue, dual emergency as an issue, and now we've got fire as an issue for us. And that was the things that came together that caused us or led to the staffing change that occurred in late 2004, fully implemented January 2005. This was a decision that wasn't taken lightly. We didn't just wake up one day and say, I think I'd like to have extra firefighters. That was not what occurred. We thought it out. We went, at the time, we implemented strategies that we thought were appropriate, and we implemented strategies to try to recruit, train, and retain capable volunteers in the community for response, and it just did not occur. So the decision was made for staffing change. But let's talk about outcomes. I gave you outcomes for the EMS side. Let's talk about the outcomes for the fire side of it. Slide may not be reading too well here as far as coloring. Again, blue on the left-hand side being fire dollar loss versus the right side being fire dollar loss after the staffing change. We cut in over half what our fire dollar loss is. Now let's look at these numbers here, because if I was trying to make a business case, pure black and white business case for a fire department with this type of data, yeah, I get it. The return on the investment is a negative return on the investment. I absolutely get that. I completely understand this is our value of property saved after the staffing change. I completely understand, this is why we have insurance. I understand that. I get that. I've got insurance on my house. You got insurance on your house. And you know what that insurance replaces? The house. But what about that 200-year family Bible that's in that structure? What about those other things? And I realize that, I see the look, and I realize that that's just stuff.
We can demagogue the heck out of it.
Oh, no. I'm just telling it like it is, okay? So those were the things that we were looking at.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll move forward here, because let's look about our ISO rating, because prior to our staffing change and our evaluation, we were ISO Class 5. That's the middle of the road. As a matter of fact, most departments in the country fit either in a Class 5 or a Class 9 rating there. And after our change and after some other things, we were able to reduce our ISO rating to a Class 3. How does that translate to dollars to you? I can't really articulate that. But again, ISO was one of those evaluation points for your insurance premiums that you pay. And then looking at the Florida side, us, 86 departments are Class 3, and we fit within that category there. So the question is where do we go from here? Because I don't want this to sound like a speech of status quo, because it's not. I fully understand as a chief, I fully understand as a taxpayer, I fully understand as a department head, anything. I completely understand the need to make sure that our cost that we use, the money that we spend, is wise and one that is efficient and effective. I get that. I completely understand it. So going back to the original premise there, for us to try and maximize our cost efficiencies and maintain our critical services outcome, we've done some evaluations, and let's talk about what we might really need here. Let's talk about critical services. Number one, EMS. How many people does it take to actually take care of a cardiac arrest patient? How many people does it actually take to care for a critically ill patient who may not be in cardiac arrest? And the question is how can we do it in a way that maintains the current quality care that we provide? Remember what I said about cardiac arrest outcomes. This is what I'm trying to replicate. I'm trying to replicate cardiac arrest outcomes that are in these numbers. So with that said, let's look at the things that we do on a cardiac arrest. CPR, uninterrupted. That means no break. Uninterrupted CPR. EKG monitoring and therapeutic care, shocking the patient, analyzing the patient, and all those other things that go on. Advanced airway techniques, basically putting a patient on a respirator. Let me just say that that one item alone has the highest liability for malpractice for EMS agencies in the nation. So when we do that skill, which is part of our everyday skill set, when we do that and we intubate that patient, a paramedic needs to continually to monitor that airway and, I believe, never leave the airway. Would you want your respiratory therapist to, and then walk away and leave you? We monitor that airway. Vascular access, both in the vein and drilling needles into the bone. These are very common procedures that we do. Medication administration. For cardiac arrest patients, in the last 3 years, we've been inducing hypothermia in the attempt to cool that patient so that it saves brain cells. All of these things are not things that we do one at a time. All of these things have to be done at the same time. This tells me that a two-person crew is not going to be able to do that. And quite frankly, that's where we were at. And I have the outcomes to kind of indicate that. So with that said, the question is what do I really need to maintain my effectiveness? Well, I'm just showing you a cabinet there of what we would take in for a cardiac arrest, and showing you that if it wasn't a cardiac arrest, the backboard and one of those boxes would be the only things that we leave behind. It's just difficult, if not impossible, for two people to even bring the equipment into the structure. Not only that, two people to provide that care is just absolutely is ineffective for us. We lose our effectiveness because of that, because of those things that all have to be done simultaneously. So the question is, what do I need? Well, let's look at some national reports. 2011, National Institutes of Standards and Technology did a study in conjunction with the University of North Carolina, the Center for Performance Excellence, which is a combination of the International Association of Fire Chiefs and the International Association of City County Managers, and a few other, the Urban Institute and a couple other think tanks, did a study to determine what was the crew size necessary to provide patient care. As a matter of fact, directly out of that report, which was 2011, paramedic crew size does matter when it comes to quality patient care. In the study, it evaluated 4-person engine company response, 3-person response, 2-person response. 4-person crew got things done faster than a 3-person crew. A 3-person crew got things done quicker than a 2-person crew. That's just intuitive to me. I didn't need a study to tell me that. I had the outcomes to support that. Time task analysis. 2-person crew, 3-person crew, 4-person crew. A 4-person crew got critical tasks done 1 minute and 23 seconds. Now, I understand that most of us would think about 1 minute and 23 seconds, and that's just a long commercial. But this is an incident where seconds count. This is an incident where seconds count. When I go back and ask the question, Chief, what do you really need in order to maintain those outcomes? I'm going to tell you I can do it with a 3-person crew. I'm going to tell you that I don't need 4-person responding. I need 3. Of those 3, 2 of them need to be a paramedic, and 1 of them needs to be an EMT. I believe that the study, as I read it, as I evaluate our data, I believe that a 3-person crew, 2 medics, 1 EMT, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I will be able to maintain my cardiac arrest outcome. Why? Was it a guess? No. The science, the data supports it. And this is a data-driven decision there. I believe I can maintain that excellent quality of care. The next question, what about dual emergencies? Well, what about them? Because I already told you what it is, and on average, if I look at it 50 to 70 times a year, if I did not have a single EMS, if I only had a single EMS unit on, there would be delay to 50 or 70 calls a year. That's an average. Could it be less? Yes. Could it be more? Yes. Can I tell you what that call is going to be? No. It very well may be 69 broken legs and 1 cardiac arrest, or it could be the other. I don't know. But if we reduce down, and I'm okay with it, this is an honest discussion, we have to recognize that there is going to be an outcome to that. Will it be quantifiable in the data? Maybe or maybe not. Honestly, in our small data set that we have, 1,000 calls, it probably won't even rear its ugly head for a couple of years, to be all frank with you. But the community did want to have 2 EMS units. But, sir, I agree with you. That may have been a time where times were good. Maybe times aren't that good anymore. Maybe a change has to happen. So this is looking at it from an honest perspective, real data-driven. The next question, what about fire? Because I can't get around the 2 in and 2 out component. Now remember what I said. We were following 2 in and 2 out before we had 4 people on duty. We just stayed out. Was it effective? No. Was it efficient? Well, yeah, it was cost savings. Did it meet the citizens at that time, their emergency? Did it meet their expectations? No, not really. But it's about choices. So the question is what can I do to replicate my fire dollar outcomes, the successes that we've had? As I said, choice, stay out, or I can seek an alternative process to service delivery, a different way of doing business. Well, that's a different way of thinking, isn't it? Let's talk about that alternative process. Today, the fire service works on the philosophy of getting there quick, engaging the fire from the inside of the structure. It's not as simple as just putting a hose in the window. It doesn't work that way. For a hose line to go in with 2 people, a backup line to be available in case of emergency, and in all of those cases, represented in the picture there, I have 2 or 4 firefighters inside that structure. How do I maintain my outcomes and keep from putting firefighters in that structure? Well, I got to use technology. I've got to use what is currently coming out in emergency technology in the fire service. And so the question is how do I maximize my effectiveness? I got to look at a different way of doing business. I teach strategies and tactics a lot. I teach it a lot. I do it here. I do it for our guys. I'm known about teaching strategies and tactics. I understand how the contemporary fire service does business. I have to be frank with you. I've challenged that paradigm. I've challenged that paradigm that says, do we really need to do it the way that we're doing it? But based off of the equipment that we have and the fact that, believe it or not, a fire in 1940 does not burn as hot as a fire in 2010. A house fire is a lot different in the last 20 years. Why? Because in 1940 and 50, you had a couch that was made by real fibers, real wood, real cotton. Today, that couch is synthetic. It puts off more gases, and those gases generate heat. From 800 degree temperature, we're now seeing home fires, and this is our scenario, fires that the temperature at the ceiling level is 13 to 1500 degrees, creating a phenomenon called flashover, meaning that everything in that given area spontaneously erupts in fire without fire contact. That's a deadly issue. By the way, we go back and look at firefighter fatalities, it doesn't happen in large buildings. It actually doesn't happen in large departments. Firefighter fatalities happen in single-family residential fires. That's where the bulk of our fatalities are. Why? Partially because of our strategies and tactics. We have to change the way that we do business. So what do I have available? I'm not going to get too deep in the science here, but I want to show you that we've been working on this and we have a potential solution. Ultra-high pressure fire suppression. That's a fancy word of saying that instead of us flowing water at 150 gallons per minute at 100 pounds per square inch, you fill up a house with water enough, you'll eventually put it out. That we go back and reintroduce firefighting technology from the 1920s. This is from the 1920s. It's just technology has updated it a little bit. So let's talk about what it is here real quick. It is the process of injecting into that structure through the wall or through the door, but from the outside, the right amount of water at the right amount of pressure to cool the gas vapors at the ceiling level without steaming the victim on the floor. When I talked about that 1300 degree temperature, that was at the ceiling level, maybe 1 or 2 foot down. At the floor level, 180 degrees. That is that much of a temperature span in an 8-foot ceiling house. When we go in with large water and the way that we do it, we create thermal balance, meaning that 1500 degrees and 200 equalizes out, and now I've got a temperature of 600 or 800 degrees at the floor level. And I effectively, if that patient could survive, they're dead. We did it. So this process gives us the ability to cool the vapor layer at the upper part of the structure here. I'm going to bring up a video here because a picture is worth 1,000. Let me just set this up for you. This is Oklahoma City. This is a training fire in an acquired structure. This is a 2-story apartment complex. So you visualize this in Satellite Beach. It's a condo, a townhome, or something of that nature. That firefighter on the left side of the screen, he is not on the second floor where that fire is at. He is standing right there at the first floor near the door in an area that's safe. He's taking a nozzle that is cutting through the drywall, and it cut through 2 inches in this video, 2 inches of poured concrete in less than a minute using an aggregate. And he interjected water at the right amount of pressure, the right amount of gallonage, and he suppressed that fire, never entering that building. You look at that upper picture on the upper right-hand corner, this is all live time. In less than 3 minutes, this fire was abated. In less than 3 minutes, We stopped the loss that was happening from that fire. And in less than 3 minutes, we did not put one firefighter, or they did not put one firefighter in harm's way. Does that mean that every fire can be fought from outside the structure? No. Does that mean that every fire will be a success? No. But as one of my slides said, I kind of skipped past it, we're not staffed for commercial fires, and we never pretended to be. We're not staffed for high-rise fires, and we never pretended to be. We staffed and we equipped ourselves to deal with the one common thread, and that was our residential house fires. So with that said, I look at this technology and I go, holy sheep dip that, man. This is a game changer. This is a game changer. And even if I wasn't having financial issues to discuss, I would be standing here and saying, I want to do this anyway. I want to keep my firefighters safe. I want to keep the community safe. I want to do the right thing. So regardless of the economics of it, this is the right thing to do. As I said, will it work on all fires? No, not necessarily, but it's a tool in the toolbox. It's another arsenal that we have to be as effective as we can be. To use a military phrase, it's a force multiplier. Force multiplier, for those in the room, what is that? That's taking one person and making them efficient and effective to be the equivalent of 2 or 3. So if I have a 4-person crew and a force multiplier tool that I've given them to, I've taken that 4 people and made them the equivalent of 6, 7, or 8. If I have a 3-person crew, as I'm wanting to staff with the EMS component of it, I take that 3-person crew and I make them the effectiveness of 4, 5, or 6 people. This is the ideal in which we're looking at. The process. There's a couple of vendors that are out there, and I've been evaluating them. As a matter of fact, September 5th, we're going to Tallahassee to do live fire training in one of the systems to see it firsthand. I've already brought them here for a demo, but I couldn't burn anybody's house down. I asked and nobody would take me up on it. So the unit, or representative of the unit, can be retrofitted into our existing fire trucks. There will be some modifications that need to be done because our cabinets don't exactly fit it, but that's a workaround. That's no big deal. The generating unit for it, tied to our water supply, hose reels, etc. As a matter of fact, you might like this. The Air Force just recently completed studies on this technology. Tyndall Air Force Base Air Force Research Laboratory did a study on it. They recognized the benefit of it and currently are putting over 200 of these units in Air Force bases around the country this fiscal year. They have bought off on the process. They did the science. Now, for the point of disclosure here, their study was initially focused on being able to cut through a B-1 bomber plane or a crash of an airplane, so it's not a structure fire. But after they did those studies, they said, wow, this is a game changer. What other applications can we use it for? And now currently they're conducting studies to look at this from a structural firefighting standpoint also. By the way, they have to follow 2 in and 2 out also. Mind you guys, we don't have basic houses here. We don't. The houses that we have that are new are lightweight truss construction, which collapse under fire conditions in less than 20 minutes. They come with windows that you think are pretty and clean, but they're hurricane impact windows. I can hit them with a sledgehammer and they not break. Firefighter killer, by the way. Or it may be one house that we had a structure fire at and they had their hurricane shutters on, closed, and locked. And they were still home. No. But it was looked at and it was evaluated. So what are my recommendations for the future? First of all, I'm going to tell you that if I had my pick in my perfect world, the Donnie's world, which is perfect now, I would want 4-person minimum staffing. Why? Because I personally feel that the dual response coverage is important, but I also understand fiscal realities. I understand that. What are the other options that are on the table? It could be looking at that 3-per staff model. Very well may be it. 2 paramedics, 1 EMT. That's what I can live with. That's what a patient can live with. Will I maintain my EMS quality care? The answer is yes to that question. Will I maintain my fire suppression capabilities with that staffing? With the technology, yes, I think I can. Will I be able to maintain dual coverage? Partial, because the staffing profile that I'm going to say, right now we're 5-person staff with 4-person minimum. We go to a 4-person staff with 3-person minimum. So guess what? There will be days that I have 2 units on duty. So am I losing that dual protection 365 days of the year? No. Am I going to have it 365 days a year? No. But that is a risk tolerance decision that we have to ask ourselves as a community. Will I be able to maintain that technical rescue component? Water rescue, yes. Trench and confined space, though it's very rare, no, I don't think I can. But I admit, it's a once-in-5-year event. It is not something that happens every day. But I'm looking at it from our employees that work in that environment every day. Can I do it with a 2-person minimum staff? Can I say hell no? No, I really can't. I will lose EMS quality care. And I'm not just saying that just because I want to say that. That's what the data says. That's what we see day in and day out. I can't maintain that EMS care. I can't maintain, I don't believe, effectively that fire suppression component, even though I can reduce down. And you say, well, Don, it's 2, you don't have to go in. There are still other things that need to be done outside the structure. I don't think I can maintain it, even with the technology. I certainly can't do the dual response, and I certainly can't handle the technical rescue aspects of it. I may be able to do limited water, but that's a discussion for another day. It's all about options. So, what's the game plan? What am I thinking? What are the things that you're thinking? Can I implement this? Oh, by the way, what's the cost? I wanted to change that, Mr. Billman, say $410,000, but that was the ladder truck. So,
we'll take that now.
Price ranges $35,000 to $45,000. Modifications $5,000 to $10,000. $50,000 to $60,000, I think, will be the up end for the units that I'm going to be recommending if we choose this option. It's a capital item. It doesn't have to be paid for immediately. I realize that that we'd like to be debt free, but we've got to be pragmatic about it too. But that doesn't mean that we don't do it as a capital lease. And then as soon as the DRS and stuff is paid off, we can pay this off, because it would be, there would be reserves to be able to do so, most likely. I'm sure. Yes,
Did you say lease? It wouldn't be a lease. It would be a buy, wouldn't it?
Well, that's a finance question. We use the term lease purchase, okay. And but yes, it is buying it. It's not lease in the sense of a copier.
Right.
It would be ours, a $1 buyout in.
Right.
Yes. So yes, sir. That's correct there. This is if changes need to happen. Question is what happens if we in the future pick the option of 3 service people on duty? I'll reduce my personnel services from last year's fiscal year, $1.4 million down to $1.2 million, roughly a $265,000 reduction in personnel costs.
Just go back a second. No, to that.
And that's personnel services, not including my operating side, which is $77,000 this year. Okay. Currently, for fiscal year 12-13, I've gathered the submitted budgets of all the departments, conferred with their fire chiefs to see where we rank at in current cost service delivery. Our current cost service delivery per capita is at the right measurement tool, no, not necessarily, but it's one that everybody uses there, is that I'm at $147 per capita, which puts me in the lower fourth of all paid fire departments in the county. If we implement this, which I don't see can be fully implemented until fiscal year 13-14, and we take that cost reduction, we will be the cheapest, cheap, that's not the right word, the most cost-effective, best value, high productivity outcome fire department in Brevard County. This is cutting edge. This is what Satellite Beach does. This is what Satellite Beach Fire Department does. We were the first EMS paramedic agency in this county, the first agency to do 12 VDCG, the first department to do a host of other things. And we will be one of the first departments implementing this technology.
Okay, Chief, $60,000 out the door, right?
That would be
with the modifications and everything. And then we own it. There's no recurring costs except for maintenance or whatever.
Yeah, and let me just tell you about that, because the one particular that I'm looking at, it actually, and it may very well make it as a sole source, but one of the things I'm looking at is that there's one product out there that uses an aggregate to cut a hole in the wall the size that big, and it will cut through, and we did testing with it last week, so we saw it firsthand. 7 inches of bulletproof glass, it'll cut through it in 2 minutes. Concrete, poured concrete, 1 inch per minute. Hurricane shutters, hurricane glass, walls, concrete. Last week, we did it on an 8-inch concrete block lengthwise, and we were through it in 17 seconds.
Okay, so that's a one-time cost with minimal maintenance over the years, and that's saving you how many total FTEs?
When we get to this point, because I got
No,
the plan up here,
it'll be a
3 FTEs. That's including the one that I've already reduced in fiscal year 12-13.
Right.
That's not 3 additional. Okay.
3 total.
3
Got it.
total. Okay.
And that would be over a period of time until we got spun down and spun up with the
That's the right way of looking at it. And let's talk about time frame, and I think this is a legitimate time frame. First of all, this is not something that can be done halfway. This has to be thought out. This is not something that I can just go buy off the shelf and make it happen. There's still research that needs to be done. I believe that this is a game changer. For the staff that we've talked to, they understand it. They understand this. They understand that it's keeping them safe. Is there questions? Will it be effective in all cases? Those are questions that we still have to research and figure out. But let's just assume that we want to start moving this direction. At minimum, and these are minimum, I think I need 60 days for evaluation. September 5th, I'm going to do one evaluation, and I'm going to take a couple of guys to Tallahassee, and we're going to, either hopefully participate in, but at least be there in live burns in acquired structures, house fires, and replicate it. I'm going to see one of the products firsthand. I understand the science, and I think it's dead on. I think it is dead on. So 60 days for evaluation, spec and purchasing of it. Because of the holidays and all the things that, because we're talking that November thing, I think it's going to take me about 90 days to get through that process. And I think it's a conservative number, but it's a number I'm going to shoot for. For the delivery component, that's no big deal. The modifications of a vehicle, that is a big deal. I don't think I can get it done in less than 30 days, so I want to be conservative there with 30 days on that modification component. Training, let me tell you something. I have got to do training. And as your fire chief, I'm not backing off on this. You don't change your fundamental way of doing business halfway.
Does training come with the purchase?
No.
Will they train you?
No, and let me validate that. They will train us as far as the operating that unit, the training that I need to do, not only for my department. Mind you, every fire that I go to, I have 2, 3, sometimes 4 other agencies represented. This is a game changer. When we do this, I'm going to tell you, the rest of the fire service is going to say I'm crazy. I am. They're not going to. When we are on fire ground scenes, we have to operate from a common reference point. And so the training is absolute. In my case here, this is what I'm saying, is that I need 2 months of training at the fire buildings over in Brevard County. We'll be doing this as a joint project with them to their burn buildings, and we're just going to be running scenario after scenario after scenario after scenario, because practice makes perfect. What's the statement we do? Play like we train and train like we play, or something like that. I've got to do that. 240, 300 days. I think that if we were moving forward on this, sir, is that I think that I can probably have this at a level of operation June or July, maybe August. That's what I see. What does this mean staffing-wise? Yes, it does mean that I'm looking at a reduction in staff. I am praying and hopeful that that will be done through the attrition process, and I'm hopeful that it will, and it probably will. But I'm not going to stand before you or you because, well, you two, next year, and say, hey, give me $60,000, and then not. I will be presenting a budget that if this is the route you want to go, yes, I will be presenting a budget that is less, 2 more position controls down, if that is the choice that the community that makes. I'm okay with that.
There's just one inherent issue.
Yes, ma'am.
And just to be honest, you're in the process of unionizing. We can't make this decision. We have to stay status quo.
No,
And I really think we need to get the opinion of our labor attorney before.
I don't think we'd be making this.
No. This
I'm
is
talking about the reduction in personnel.
Yeah,
But we wouldn't be making that decision now.
I don't think, with all frankness, I don't think you should anyway, because we have the research and development phase that we've got to go through. This is an option for us to look at. Yes, does labor need to be at the table? Absolutely, they need to be at the table. And it can't be just a swing of the gavel and we're done. And you
Well, I
are dead
think
on.
that the presentation is interesting, and I think it's great, but I think it's premature, given the fact that we're going into this negotiation process.
And I respect where you're coming from.
And
I'm
how many
giving
other
you-
municipalities in Florida use this system?
None.
None.
Not that I'm aware of. My last discussion was Sunrise Fire Department that is looking at putting it in their ladder companies.
And our vehicles can be retrofitted with the
Yes,
system
and
given their age?
yeah, absolutely. The total weight of the unit is 1,000 pounds. We have one truck that we're 100% confident that can be retrofitted in. It's not the truck I want to do it in, but I'm pretty confident that, well, let's put it this way. Yes, I can retrofit in the trucks. I got the truck that I want to do it in, that's going to be our 1,250 GPM pumper. But if I have to go another route, I will. And that will be our squad truck, but that's not going to be.
And you advise that we're not equipped to handle commercial fires or high-rise fires,
And
correct?
let me validate that. This is a high number of firefighter. It's not capability of the individual, it's the number of resources.
I'm talking about presently.
I'm not sure. I understand the
You
question.
said that we're not equipped to handle, we're just equipped to handle residential fires,
I
correct?
may have used the wrong choice of words here. Let me.
Staffed.
That may be the better answer.
And can you say, I looked at, we saw the pie chart, 7% are structure fires. How many does that equate to per year on average?
On average, yeah, we had 11, in that fire category, that also includes car fires. So structure fires, about 11 structure fires a year. Out of that 11, between 4 and 6 would actually be pull hose off the truck, go in, blah, blah. We've had 2 structure fires in the last 30 days, and they weren't BS calls. We had 2 structure fires just in the last 30 days, and both of them were contained to room and contents, but we also responded with 4 or 5 guys.
And then how many cardiac arrests on average per year?
Last year, we had, I'm doing this off the top of my head, I want to say 14 cardiac arrests. And the numbers average between 10 and 15 once every about 3 or 4 weeks. And let me just say this, when you look at other agencies' numbers, I don't pad my numbers. Just because Granny died, it doesn't mean that was a cardiac arrest. My definition of cardiac arrest was it was an unintended death of an individual that required immediate action. So, others may say, well, we had 15, 20, 25, but it may not have been representative of the population sample that I'm referencing.
And would you be kind enough to go over the first responder agreement with Brevard County, what that is, and explain to the council and to the citizens what that is?
Okay. The first responder agreement, which is currently in effect, which was negotiated, actually we were the leads on it, and quote me on the year, but I want to say 2001, maybe a year or 2 off on that. Essentially what it is we as the fire chief said, hey, you're transporting a patient and billing for them, and Medicare prohibits a non-transport entity to bill for the service. You're billing for them, and we've got the cost. It's our drugs, our IVs, our da-da-da. So that was the genesis of it. And so the way it was negotiated out and worked through is that each agency that provides EMS services, one gets a flat rate for the number of units they have. I want to say that the number is $19,000. It fluctuates each year because as the county's reduced its millage and stuff, we've had to renegotiate the numbers that are there. And then we are reimbursed for our supplies, or EMS supplies. The reimbursement runs right at 50 cents on the dollar. So I'll spend maybe $8,000 in EMS supplies for all of our patients. Out of that, about $4,200 of it will be replaced. It will be reimbursement back from the county. So total, I anticipate $44,000 this year. The question comes back is, will we potentially lose that B? If we take one unit out of service, will we potentially lose that $19,000 component? Because it's partially the number of units. Yes, it's possible, but I can't say that it is. I can't say one way or the other, but I will say this. In the last 5 years, we have probably worked so hard to keep that contract in place. that every year it's a battle. And you know me, I can talk, and I'm usually the one that's fighting to keep it going. And I have to tell you, I don't know that politically well. I can't tell you that in fiscal year 13-14 that money will be there or not. I'm hopeful that it will. I actually think it will be, but I think it very well may be at a reduced rate. So that $19,000 that we would lose if it was today's dollars may not be that a year and a half from now.
I'd like to hear the rest of the briefing.
That was it.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not.
I think, Chief, I want to tell you that you know, when we're talking budget, and Councilwoman, I think an issue we need to take into consideration here is we're talking budget, we're talking not only this year, but long term.
And this is my long term.
This is a long term.
Yes, sir.
I mean, short term, long term, because it's next year,
Yeah.
it sounds like.
Fiscal year 13-14.
Right, which would be next.
Yeah, not the budget that we're talking about right now. Yeah.
Right. I think it's a worthy effort, and I would like to say that I would like to give him some direction that he should press on down this path, because I think it's a worthy efficiency. I am very impressed with the study, with the fact that you've actually gone out and tried it, and I think nothing reflects efficient thinking better than incorporating new technology into ways of doing best business. And if we can purchase this thing for 60 grand or whatever, you know, the ballpark is, and we can save 3 FTEs through attrition, would be the optimum way to do it.
Yes, sir.
We will be money ahead and lives ahead, it sounds like to me, in the future. And I think we should have him press down that road.
I just don't think a budget workshop is the time or the place. We're here to talk about the budget. We're not voting on anything. It was a great presentation, but I'm just bewildered why we're discussing it tonight. And I'm also concerned about the unionization and the process that we need to go through.
Well, the unionization issue, the status quo unionization issue is for right now, while we're getting ready to, while city is not us, but the city's getting ready to negotiate. Once you're unionized, just being unionized doesn't mean that you can't change.
No, I understand.
Better business decisions. You can make business decisions, and you can change the department. You can change a lot of stuff,
Well,
even with the union.
my gut is telling me that we're going to purchase this, and I have to tell you, it's not out there in the state yet. And then the bargaining process is going to come back and say, you can't. You know,
But we're not changing the personnel right now.
No. I think there's a couple things that are in place here that and I am very sensitive to what you're saying. I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. We're still in the research phase of this. I suspect that we probably or hopefully will have already dealt with the labor component and the agreements before we get to the actual purchase phase of this. I still got evaluations I got to do. Okay, you know, and listen, you and I both know that that this is just not a simple decision. This is one that has to be strategically thought out. But I want you to know, and this is not Don Hughes doing this. We've talked about this as an agency. We've talked about this as a department. We understand the things that need to be done. And so, this is the reason why I'm taking firefighters with me, because why am I making a decision that impacts them? They need to be part of that process.
Well, if I was a firefighter, I'd like it because it sounds to me like it's safe. It takes them out of harm's way in many respects.
It makes their job safer.
Right. Are you going to be asking, you're talking 240 days. It seems to me then that you're going to be asking for this in the budget, which is why it becomes a budget issue.
That would be, you could have it as part of this discussion, or and I don't want to jump into this, so I'll let Ann answer that question, because I may say something wrong like I normally do.
That is correct. We're actually looking at this as, a potential addition to the budget, and hence the discussion this evening.
What's the cost of the training?
The training will be, it's going to be in staffing component.
Within 60 days?
Oh, no, the training would not happen until probably May. Would be about the
For next year's budget?
Yeah.
Training cost?
And
For this year's budget, for the one we're discussing right now.
I'm going to throw a hypothetical number out, because there's a couple different ways of doing it. I'm going to say less than $5,000. And that will be both because we'll probably have to have personnel claim involved in it, and then we have to, you just don't, it's not a natural, we have to pay for rental for the use of the facilities, okay? It averages between $600 and $1,000 a day. However, when we do joint training with Brevard County, because it's under the automatic aid agreement, we are not charged that fee, and I don't anticipate that. As a matter of fact, we've actually asked them to partner with us a little bit in the study of this, because with all frankness, this very well may be something that impacts them in the future too.
And has the Brevard County Board of Commissioners looked at this and agreed on this?
This is at the departmental level, and we routinely discuss training issues at that level. I mean, we've got scheduled live burns coming up with them in the next month or so, and that's just a normal thing. You know, we schedule up, we're doing joint training together, so that's just normal.
In the spirit of efficiency, you're asking us to purchase a capital asset that's $65,000 with an unknown of training dollars for next year.
Well, then, you know what? To be quite frank, I wasn't sure where we were going with this. I can certainly provide an answer for that before you finish out the budget process.
But let's keep this in perspective. For the $65,000 or whatever the up training charge comes to, you're listing here 3 FTEs, and FTE total loaded is what, about 100 and...
Oh, no, it'd be, no.
So it'd be about $250,000 a year? Because you got 259 here, 259.
That would be our reduction from, and let me just tell you how that number comes, because I'm taking into account the positions that might be attrition.
Right.
Okay.
No, I know. I see that. One in 12, 13, 2, and 13, 14. Okay. But my point is for the $65,000 investment now.
The return on the investment.
The return on the investment. Say again.
Less than 3 months. Less than 3 months return on investment.
Yeah, not only that, but it's the gift that keeps on giving over the years.
Yeah.
Because every year then we're not paying, we don't have three extra FTEs, which goes into retirements and healthcare and all that other stuff. I think it's a worthy cost.
I would like more data. I don't, where else in the country are they using this system?
Absolutely. No worries.
It's not in Florida anywhere.
No worries. Actually, in the Titusville, it's Titusville, I'm so sorry. Tallahassee Fire Department is evaluating. That's the reason why we're going there. Sunrise Fire Department.
And I also would like to see costs on how much exactly the training is going to cost.
No problem. That's an easy number.
Did you also
I just don't have it off the top of my head. I don't want to quote a wrong number for you.
And if in fact Brevard County is truly interested in cost sharing and you know,
well, cost sharing in the sense that we do joint training.
Joint training.
Okay, and that's something we do today. It's nothing new.
But if they're not interested in the system, then they're not going to need to train it.
Well, okay, I'll give you that. And so what I'll do is because that's the unknown, I don't know, but I don't anticipate a challenge, but I have other options that I can go, and I will add in the worst case scenario options then.
Of course, well, but didn't you also say that the Air Force in Florida is using it? Tyndall's using it?
It was researched at the Air Force Research Laboratory in Tyndall, and as I understand it, units. And there's 200 units being delivered.
Okay.
How that interfaces with Patrick, I don't have an answer to that right this second.
And my point was going to be, talk about setting a precedent. If this is successful, and we demonstrate that we can protect our firefighters, make their job safer, at the same time save the taxpayers 3 FTEs a year.
And maintain the current level of service that we provide.
Yeah, and maintain current level service, right. Man, what a precedent that sets across the state, let alone the county and everywhere else.
Well, if I might suggest, if I understand, because I probably would have been evaluating it regardless, okay? What we'll do is I'll continue the evaluation process. I will do so very earnestly, okay? So that I can bring back, especially the things that you've asked for, ma'am, is bring them back to us and whether we're workshop format, individual briefing, whatever you guys want.
Well, I think eventually it's going to have to be done relatively rapidly, Chief, because if we're going to go this way, or at least attempt to go this way, we should at least have a placeholder in the budget.
I don't disagree. And by the way, because even though it goes in the budget, they're still coming back for final approval to purchase. Mm-hmm. You know, so just because it's in the budget doesn't mean...
I said a placeholder.
Yeah.
There needs to be a placeholder for it.
You mentioned the capital asset fund and that the fact that the David Schechner Center would be paid off next year.
14, fiscal year 13, 14 or something like that.
Correct.
Yeah. Is that the correct?
That is correct.
So I assume this money's going to come out of the capital asset fund?
That would be correct.
Chief, to go this way, is it going to reduce our class rating from a 3? Will it go up a little bit? Since we have fewer,
Very valid question. And our difference between a class 3 and class 4 is 0.6 of a point. We have conferred with ISO. We do not believe, of course, they have to look at the system synergist at the whole thing, but because we've already reduced to 1, it didn't impact our ISO rating when we gave home. And we've asked about 2, and he says he hasn't run the numbers yet, but he doesn't think it will. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't. He just doesn't think that it will. And I'm going to be frank with you here, is that a 3 or a 4 in the residential domain probably does not really translate to a cost savings or increase, however you want to look at it. When we get below a class 4, typically the benefactors are the commercial side. But at a class 3, we still didn't impact them that greatly. It's when you go even further than that they really see the savings.
You talked about the response time. I know we had a little, I don't know what you call it, snafu a couple months ago, a fire on St. John's. The fire department responded, and then the Indian Harbor got a call, and they were debating response times, things like that. Are we looking at dispatching changes or anything on a county level, or uniting together?
Let me answer that question very broadly here. One of the strategies had always been, if you've got to wait 5 minutes for another unit to get there from another agency, well, since I can't make them drive faster, let's get them dispatched sooner. Okay? Our dispatch system works extraordinarily well for the city of Satellite Beach. The challenge is that we have 9 public safety answering points, and so when a fire call comes in, literally, and this is just this last week, I can personally attest to it, is that dispatcher didn't get one 911 call because everybody and their brother and 12-year-old kid has got a cell phone, and they don't get one 911 call, they get 10. And so you have one dispatcher trying to answer all the 911 calls, get us dispatched out, get the things in there, blah, blah, blah. And then when the call is over, then they call a 7-digit number to Brevard County and says, we need help. There's a process delay that's there. It's just a natural delay. So to answer your question, trying to figure out ways with Brevard County with specificity. I don't quote me on the year, but it's going to be around 2005, 6-ish, somewhere around there. We approached Brevard County Fire Rescue to be our primary dispatch, and at the time, the cost estimate from Chief Farmer was around $40,000. Okay. Is that still something that's in play for the future? Yes, it probably can be. But the thing is that we're assuming that engine in Sea Park is sitting there waiting for our emergency. And as I said, they respond to Merritt Island, south to Suntree and all that. So I think that is a worthy endeavor to continue to look for. And Chief Collins and I are trying to figure out no-cost alternatives. No-cost alternatives. We've thrown a couple things out, and I'll just leave it at that. But regardless, even if I got them there, let's just say that I got Brevard County there 2 minutes faster. Let's just do a hypothetical. This is still the right thing to do because it keeps everybody safe. So that's how I would be approaching it. So that's the challenge that exists there. And by the way, let me talk about response times here just real quick. Those times are measured from the time that the 911 call comes into our dispatch center. You didn't have to figure out, that snafu about response times and everything. That measurement was from the time they came into our dispatch center. That because of the inefficiency, sometimes that pops up for these once in, 6, 7, 8 times a year, there's this automatic delays that happen, and that is how that got translated out. It didn't come out the right way, but the response time is from the emergency starts for us.
The vehicle that you want to install this unit on, what is the age of the vehicle?
My preference will be that it'll be, and it is coming back, the 1996 engine that we've replaced the engine in. It's just got some pump and stuff being taken care of. That is the unit that we want to install it in. Let me just give you the reason why. This is like tool in the toolbox. It's not the end all, the beats all. Guess what? I'm still going to have fires that need to flow 1,000 gallons a minute. All right? So I want this to be in my front run engine, which is a 1996. When we do this, understand that if time down the road that we replace a vehicle, no biggie. Now we spec the vehicle and we just unbolt the unit and move it to the next one. So And to answer, you didn't ask the question, we've already talked with E1, the weight load, the chassis weight load and everything, we're fine. If that is not, if for whatever reason we run into a real challenge installing it, then we're going to install it into our 2004 Type 2 engine, which is the squad truck, which has a 500-gallon per minute pump in it. But 100% will go in that vehicle.
What's the age of the other vehicle?
Well, then that's our 1992.
I think I would like, this is a workshop, we can't vote obviously, but I would like to see this integrated into the budget. At least have a placeholder for it. Yeah.
It's more information, like say the training cost.
Oh, I respect that.
I personally would not like to see the placeholder at this time because I'd like to hear what the community thinks about how they would like their levels of service handled, whether they would like some prototype or a pilot. I think it's kind of like a pilot program, or they would like to stay with the 2 in, 2 out. I mean, it's kind of a community decision, really.
Sure.
Okay.
Am I good?
Want to do that? I guess that's my question.
Oh, yeah, no, one more, Chief. Way back when, you and I were talking a couple of times about gaining efficiencies via dispatch, via consolidated dispatch. Can you talk any more about that? Do you think that we could still find efficiencies through consolidating our dispatch?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to speak for what the police department's needs are.
I'm just asking for yours.
Okay. At the end of the day, is a single fire dispatch system probably in the best interest of the fire service and us specifically? I'm going to say yes, for a variety of reasons. Number one is one thing that Brevard County has done, and their new fire chief has just really been doing some awesome work, is that, he's like data. And they've implemented the right type of computer-aided dispatch system in there that actually looks at the system as a whole. And when they dispatch units and they see gaps in the service area, they transition their units and relocate them to fill those service gaps. Where it has been most evident for us is in the EMS side of it. And we now see, and you'll say, well, why in the heck is a SunTree unit standing by at Starbucks? I made no coffee, but they have been relocated because the beach side is down units and they're relocating for that allocation. If we consolidate our dispatch system, we will be visible to them. So I will tell you that from the dual response component, that may be the strategy that makes those few times a year that we don't have dual units, that makes it more palatable, because now instead of an 8 or 9 minute response, maybe it is a 4-minute response. That would be my opinion on it. Could it be done in a low, no-cost way? I'm not qualified to answer that question, but Chief Collins and I knows that I like everything free. And, but I think that well, to be quite frank with you, why don't we do this? Why are we piecemealing this? Let me just
I think it's a worthy discussion.
But let me just be very clear here. The police department has their own specific needs, and I am not,
Understood.
Okay. All right.
I think it's worthy discussion to have.
And one other thing, and this is not an issue for you, capital improvement plan, over and over and over and over, top 10 on our list, we don't have one. And it's really hard to say, Chief Hughes comes in, Chief Pearson comes in, we're all hitting at that capital asset fund, but we really need to have a plan in place. We could budget this in,
You could just adopt mine and get a new engine.
It really needs to be done. It's so important. It could have been budgeted in long term, not just in, let's add a line item and here's 65 grand, but we don't know what the cost of the training is going to be. And, I kind of see it as an open-ended item where you're going to invest 65, but we don't know what the training's going to be and what the other.
And I respect that, but that's an easy answer to provide. I just don't have the right number.
Okay, I'll provide it.
Good work, Chief.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like it.
We're done with the council here.
No, he said we're done. No.
Yeah, you can sit over there, I suppose, by the microphone, and we'll take some citizen comments. I suppose the best way, again, which we usually do, I think we take the comments, and then after all the comments are finished, then you'll respond to each of those individually, I suppose, so it doesn't take up too much time individually, something like that, and a 3-minute time limit. And we'll start. Vic? And name and resident or non-resident?
Vic Brungart, non-resident now, but resident February the 11th, 2012. I don't have a prepared speech. But I came in, I saw something in Beaches which brought to mind something that said, how about lowering spending? This is August 24th. How about balancing the budget? Let's practice common sense for a while. Necessary spending, yes. Unnecessary spending, no. When we get our fiscal house in order, we can think of the nice to have but unnecessary things. Indian Harbor Beach Fire Department is still steamed about this 19-minute response time thing, Vice Mayor. And I talked to the chief, the chief of Indian Harbor Beach Fire, and vice chief and a bunch of their people. I have been a volunteer firefighter for a ton of years in 4 different states. I am highly trained. I'm highly experienced. I was a volunteer of the Satellite Beach Fire Department, treated like in German, Scheiß. I don't know the translation. I am also a highly trained, highly experienced paramedic. I teach paramedics. Went on to med school.
Vice Mayor Rhodes, this is off topic. You need to talk about the budget for the fire department.
That's part of the topic. The topic is this. We're talking about budget. Well, if you want to have a reduced budget, you get some volunteers in there and treat them right, and you can lower your budget. In Virginia, I was a member of the statewide Virginia Volunteer Fire Department services, EMS and so forth. We had a huge contingent of volunteers, and we were respected by paid volunteers. And just because you're paid, ladies and gentlemen, that doesn't mean you know more than a volunteer. Now, we all know about the fact that we have budget woes. And I won't even go into the Satellite Beach Community Redevelopment Authority. But I'm going to tell you this. We don't need boys and their toys getting the latest and greatest just because it's the latest and greatest. Personally, as a taxpayer, I don't want to be the test bed for the state of Florida for the best and greatest. I want to get money in my wallet that stays in my wallet. Sure, I want to have good EMS, but I'll tell you what, in closing, I've got a plan that we could privatize and get rid of municipal employees and privatize, or I wrote to Larry Collins that says, let's get the county. Thank you.
John Baker, I'm a resident. Some of you suggested that we might be able to save some money by using a county fire department services instead of our own. Please listen carefully to what I have to say. On the evening of the 8th of November, 1993, my wife and I were strolling down Jackson Avenue when she said she wasn't feeling very well. So we sat down on the sidewalk. A young man saw that there was a problem, and he stopped and said he was a lifeguard. And he offered to drive us home. While we were attempting to get her in the car, she collapsed. I was panic-stricken. He checked her pulse, which was practically non-existent. Then he ran and called 911. Within 3 minutes, the Satellite Beach Emergency Response Team, consisting of Dean White, Bobby Kidd, and Talina King, arrived. They determined that she was having symptoms of a heart attack and began immediate action to stabilize her vital organs. Her signs were very rapidly deteriorating. Due to the quick response of the emergency response team, her condition was arrested from further deterioration. She was then transported to Holmes by the Harbor City Volunteer Ambulance Squad. Why am I telling you this? Because had the nearest county ambulance service been available to help my wife, she could have died. It would have taken 8 minutes for them to get here, not 3. From the closest station was over 4 miles away. Without the professional expertise and prompt response of the Satellite Beach response team, it's very unlikely that Mrs. Baker would be alive today. Thank you.
No public comment? Yes, sir?
My name's Ron Long. I live up in Norwood Avenue.
I'm sorry, what was your last name?
Ron Long. And I've been involved in fire protection design for about probably 20 years of my life. And it's been probably 20 years ago. You know, there's been a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of stuff over the years back when I was, come up with new technology and new stuff. Some of it works and some of it doesn't. And I think you're being pretty risky if you bet your future on something that hasn't been vetted a whole lot better than this. I think most of this stuff is built for aircraft fires and not residential. And I don't, if you look at most of the homes around here, they're open construction. This, I think, requires some degree of confinement to work properly. Another thing, if you're going to do it, you're going to buy one. And you're already concerned about the reliability of your vehicles. So if the vehicle that has that system on it is down that day, you don't have a response.
Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
My name is Dee Anderson. I've lived here in Satellite Beach for over 40 years. 2 years ago, my daughter was hit by a car over in Melbourne. It took an hour and 15 minutes for the paramedics to get there. She had 2 knee surgeries. She's still on a cane from this. On August the 8th, I got a call from a friend of mine on Norwood. She was having difficulty breathing. And I got dressed, went over to her house, and found out she was having difficulty. I didn't know what was wrong with her. She wanted me to take her to the emergency room, and I was afraid to. I was afraid she died before we got there. So I called the fire department. Within 4 minutes, they were there. I was amazed and stood back and watched them with their efficiency. They had her vitals. They were working on her. She had acute bronchitis, but she also has COPD. The woman was about to die. And they got her in a gurney and took her to the hospital. In the meantime, her doctor's office called. I said, our fire department's here. They're taking her to the hospital. They said, we'll be waiting for her. And by the time they got her there and got her stabilized, but I have never seen anything like that. I stood back in the kitchen and watched them. And boy, you talking about efficiency. And I'm going to tell any of you here, you get sick, you better believe it. You call the fire department and you'll thank God that they're here and we have them. Thank you.
Comments?
John Fergus, 135 Maple. I'd like to see the chief have an opportunity to pursue this opportunity. It isn't 100% that it'll work, even if we buy it. So you need a phase-in. You don't retire an aircraft before you know you've got another one that'll work. So there needs to be some overlap, which means there is going to be some double money for a while. And with all that being said, since this is a budget meeting, I really want to emphasize, I don't want to see a budget that's anything below the rollback that you guys made the maximum. I would have preferred rollback plus. But don't go anywhere below rollback, at least not on my watch. Thank you.
Comments? Yeah.
Sadie Baker, resident. I will follow up with what my husband reported. This Satellite Beach Fire Department, Police Department, all our departments are excellent, but in the situation, the day that I had, or the evening that I had my heart attack, I was 56 years old. I had never had any heart problems and had passed a physical within the previous 5 weeks. What I'm saying to people, this could happen to you, a family member, a friend, a loved one, an acquaintance. We never know when we're going to need some quick response to a medical emergency. And I personally do not object in the very slightest to having to pay a few more dollars to keep the fine trained people that we have in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron?
Ron Dragutis, resident, Satellite Beach. Thank you, Chief, for that presentation. Interesting and good. Makes sense. But I'm at a crossroads of a dilemma at this point. Not to say that you shouldn't research it. Not to say that you shouldn't look at this alternative. I think this alternative at this point is a viable alternative. I don't think we're going to cut our EMS at this point, which is the majority of the calls, so I'm not overly concerned about that issue. What I am concerned about is I hear the fire department making its case right now, and it makes sense, but I also have another concern with the police department. They made a case that makes sense for technology, for safety, and for response time, and dealing with criminals. And then I go back to the Capital Improvements Fund. I don't think I see something, and I know the council is going to discuss it tonight. We have nothing budgeted in for the police department technology. So now we're at another crossroad, and my dilemma is this, that we really need to look at the Capital Improvement Fund and carefully analyze what's in there right now and come up with a plan to have the availability, and someday, it may not happen now, it's probably going to be long range, is to make sure that account is funded and we can continue on without obtaining debt and fund these things, that new technology, and go forward with it without wasting capital on interest expense. Thank you.
Thank you. More public comment? Okay, Chief, you want to address some of the items that came up? Or?
You didn't get a specific question, so in regards to Mr. Long on the aircraft component not being tested in-house, that's not exactly correct. Is that there is residential studies that are done on also, and I recognize the fact. So when we do our presentation, we'll add that component into it to make sure we answer that question. But I've been in this business 30 years, and I'm pretty sure that we're in great shape with this. I'll stop at that, but I've been in this business 30 years, and I see this as a very viable option. In regards to Mr. Baker and Mrs. Baker, hey, you're still here. And as far as Mr. Broomgard, I really don't have a reply.
The technology isn't just tested here on the aircraft. Isn't it tested in other countries? In all the discussions and everything, I did want to get that. This is I'm sorry. I just don't like hearing myself, believe it or not. No, it is a European model,
and with specificity given to Sweden and parts of France and parts of the United Kingdom. As a matter of fact, the truth is that my first exposure to this was about 7 or 8 years ago with a gentleman from Manchester, England, and was talking about their process. And at the time, as far as the technology had not come back to the U.S. It started off in the U.S. back in the 1920s, but fell out of vogue in the 1970s. So this is kind of, it's just like a penny, it comes back around sometimes. But the aspect of this is that, yes, it's not new technology. It's not been implemented well in the United States, but it's been a European model for quite some time.
What U.S. fire departments currently use it? That video was from Oklahoma City?
That was Oklahoma City, and that was a test study that was done by Oklahoma City Fire Department and a manufacturer of a particular unit. And I've left that name brain out because when we go through the bid spec process...
Is Oklahoma City using it?
I do not believe they have adopted it yet, but the study was very compelling. I think it's like a lot of people, it's like Tallahassee. We're all looking for options. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, the fire service...
You need technology to be efficient, if it works.
It works, and I respect it. I don't want to do anything that doesn't work, but listen, I'm looking at alternatives.
Yep.
Can I make just one comment? Those kind of systems, I don't know the details of this, and I may be well. My experience, systems like that work well in small confined spaces. Most of these houses, especially houses built in the last 20 years, are more open areas. If you try to flood the steam or something in an open area, it's very difficult.
I'll be more than
happy. In a small bedroom, it may work fine, but in an open area of the house, I don't think that would work.
Again, I've been doing this a long time, okay, and I'll be certainly happy to sit off for you long, because I don't think anybody wants to go through the science of that was actually one of my very first things that I asked. That was one of my first filters, if you will, because you're right, homes are not built very compartmentalized anymore, open floor plan. That was a very specific question that was asked. And I was very comfortable with the answer and looking at the data. Again, all things set aside here. This is an evaluation process of looking at an alternative. But you're from fire suppression and sprinklers and stuff? Is that what? Okay.
But the good news is, and talking, the Bakers spoke to it, and some other folks spoke to it. The good news is we would be maintaining our levels of service for EMS because you would be keeping the 3 EMS folks, and we would be actually improving the lot of our firefighters from a safety perspective, if it works.
Yes. Just to caveat that though. That 2 medical unit response is a part that very well may come out of the mix, but and since we're discussing this dispatch piece, there may be a solution to that also.
I like it. But I think what this does is it makes it painfully obvious that this city needs a capital improvement plan.
Absolutely.
I can't believe we've never had a capital improvement plan. We need one. And I think we established that as a requirement. When do you think we're going to get around to being able to get that? This is a perfect opportunity for it.
Well, these are programs that the departments have been working on to try to come up with their rendition for what they need for capital improvement. And it is true that one of the things mentioned in the KPEG was about $150,000. Is that not true, Chief Pearson, for the RMS, was it?
Yes, that's the minimum we could do to get us where we need to be.
That's right.
Which is why we need a capital.
Well, it's like we're all over the map because we don't have a CIP, and so we can't prioritize what is needed by the city, and it's very frustrating.
How did this city do business without a capital improvement plan?
Unfortunately, we're going to have to plug along and make that #1 priority.
For this to be implemented or even move in that direction, do we need to look at something for this year's budget, which is about 2.5 weeks away?
That's up to council, and again, I think Don said, Chief Hughes said that he was going to be looking into some more of the details here to get back with any questions that you had. This can go into capital leases. That is not a problem with the cost of this and the fact that the Schechter Center also is going to be retired in fiscal year 13-14.
And I painstakingly went through the budget and everything, and when you look at the capital asset section, there's ways that we can put money into that capital asset, remove them from the departmental budget, and then as needed, they can come to us and ask for that money later on, then putting it into a line item and dedicating it to a department. So that might be something we look at
Exactly, which is
later,
the whole idea behind
later
it.
this evening,
Yeah.
if we ever get there.
Okay. So, I mean, can we tell the chief to press on looking at it?
Yeah, I would like to see more info on it, absolutely. I thought it was interesting, but I am a word of housekeeping. You know, this was on the agenda, and the item was dropped on our desk, and it wasn't on the internet for the public to look at, and I just don't appreciate that. I've had a problem with this since I was elected, that we need the backup data before we get here. And another point of housekeeping, it's up to the chair to dictate who's out of order and who's not, and I just think it was inappropriate for the clerk to tell one person he's off topic, yet a lot of people are off topic tonight. So that's all I want to say. Oh, and one other thing. I heard tonight, too, that we have suggested, or some of us have suggested, that the county come in and take over services. It's absolutely not true. And it's almost been a year since the election. Again, we moved here, my family moved here in 2000 because of the services, with a 1-year-old and a newborn. And so this misconception that I want to have the county come in and take over police and fire services is simply not true. We were very specific when we moved from Indian-Atlantic to Satellite Beach that we moved into a municipality that had those services. And I know that, I don't know if the other two councilmen want to speak. So the myth needs to stop, and it needs to stop tonight.
Well, I mean, I brought it up as part of my campaign as something to look at. And if we're not looking at all the alternatives, folks, we're screwing up. We're in a tough fiscal situation, and we need to ask the tough questions. And many of the answers are going to be, nope, tried it, can't do it, we don't need to do it anymore. But we have to ask the question and look at all the possible alternatives. It's the only smart way to do business, and we need to do it that way. So
I think Chief has some direction, come up with some more numbers for the training and the bottom line number. Okay, we have 3 more items. Let's take about a 10-minute break. About 5 after 8, we'll come back.
We got a lot of budget stuff.
No, I don't have to be gavel, do I? No. Okay.
Where did it go?
Right, yeah, we're at agenda item B, 3B, and that would be millage rate / budget options. And we'll go to Ian again.
Indeed it is. And first slide, Brenda. Okay. This is, of course, for fiscal year 12-13, and we're talking about millage rate and budget options here. Now, this is based off of the starting point is from the August 8th budget presentation. So that's from the big packet that was put out with the entire budget and all the supporting aspects to that. And that was the millage rate was rollback minus 1%, which was 8.3139. So that's our starting point. Now, we have 3 options here that we're looking at. Option 1 is rollback minus 0.5%. Option 2 is rollback 0.25%. And option 3 is the straight-up rollback rate. Now, as per the discussion at the last meeting, we have placed back in the budget the cost of the 3 police department employees, and as you can see that under each option, that is $171,000. Now, when you also look at each of the options, for example, in rollback minus 0.5%, we're talking about revenue then increasing by $24,862. If it's negative 0.25%, there would be an increase of $37,307. And if we went to straight rollback, you would see an increase at that 8.3979 at $49,743. Now, the departmental budgets that it's showing, the decreases for each of the departments, that totals up, and of course it's the same total for each of the options at $39,861. And we did find an insurance savings, and that came from, now remember, employees' insurance is paid at 100%, the individual employee, and with family members, it's a 50-50 split. And this year, also to add to the insurance savings, was that there was zero premium, additional cost to premium. So premiums did not increase at all this year, and Brenda had budgeted in, I believe it was about 8%, is that correct? So there, that savings is also reflected there in the $41,277, and again, that is the same for each of the options. So that's what you see in each of those columns. Now, when you get down to the final amount there, it says balance from reserves. Now, this is basically taken from expenditures, and the initial reserve amount in rollback -1 was $181,920. Well, that will be reduced at rollback minus 0.5% to $116,920, which is what we're required by law to place into the reserves. If we go with rollback minus 0.25%, the reserves would be about $129,365, and under option 3, it would be $141,801.
Go on to the next page, right?
No, I actually haven't. I'm jumping the gun, though, because what it indicates here is that reserves under option 1 would be reduced $65,000, which would give the total of $116,920.
I didn't. Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry. I jumped ahead. I was so excited that I got ahead of myself.
Okay, so on the long sheet,
okay, now
option 1 reflects $116,920 going into the reserve fund.
That is correct.
Okay.
And then option 2 would reflect $129,365 going into reserve, and then under option 3, which is the rollback rate, it's $141,801 going into reserves.
We only put $6,400 in last year.
That is correct. $6,470, I believe.
And what's the required for?
$116,920. Is that correct, Brenda? Okay. So that is required as per, is that GAP? Or GASB 54. Okay.
How did we get away last year only putting in $6,000?
Council had just implemented that, the new policy, balance policy, which GASB had also implemented it, and the council had approved it.
So this was the first year that that would have been implemented. I believe we are, and badly.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide, please.
And how much?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I couldn't see on from these lines. Is there a line item in here for a generic debt pay down, or is that on? How is debt servicing reflected?
Well, do you remember that sheet? And that's not included here. It's from the original budget where we included the sheet on debt. Let me see here. It was a new addition to explain the types of debt and the revenue that funds that debt. Let me see here. See, I'm looking at...
And in the aggregate, all I was trying to get at is what, if any, additional debt servicing are we able to do if...
Well, the general fund doesn't have any debt.
Okay.
So there isn't anything provided in there. If you look at after Ann's budget message, it's the second page after her budget message is all of the debt schedule.
Right.
Debt is in stormwater, CRA, and capital leases.
Yeah, those were the three areas that we broke down into the dedicated revenue and principal and interest payments and when they would be retired, if you remember that. That doesn't, you know, we're not talking future liabilities of pension and that type of thing in there. Those were that was the debt with the dedicated revenue that was coming in so that you could look and see what was funding the debt for capital leases, stormwater, as well as CRA. and what the interest and principal payments were, and when each of those debts would be retired. So that was the play out on that.
And there's nothing we can do with CRA, so, in this form, so.
Now, the only thing that we can do on that, as you discussed at the board meeting, would be to put money into a sinking fund.
Which
Right.
makes sense. Okay. Then the only other debt, well, not the only other debt, but a large debt balance is the unfunded retirement liability.
Well, that's what we're talking about is pension.
And how, do we have anything put in the budget to accelerate the pay down of that? Or do we not have the money to do that? Probably don't have the money to do that.
Well, we're paying that as the actuary instructs us to pay.
Okay.
And we're making those payments.
Okay.
And that's built into the payments for the actuary.
Okay. There's no, okay.
But we are, remember,
There's no advantage that we get from accelerating that payment? It doesn't make it better for us from a
no, the only thing that you could do is revisit the type of pensions that you have and potentially look at changing some of the parameters.
So that's one of those things that we have to wait till we look at.
Well, and that's one of the things that we're beginning to look at.
The employment or the employees' benefit plans.
Well, that's correct too, and that for the unions, of course, that's a negotiation point.
Right.
So.
Okay. Now, things like, however, benefit issues like absences, unpaid absences, sick leave payouts, those sorts of things, where is that reflected?
That's in the financial statements on the liabilities, so that doesn't have anything to do with the budget.
Okay.
So
but it is a liability. It is a.
Yes, and that's actually paid as you go. As the employee uses it, then it's paid out. But it's not reflected as a budget item. It's not.
But it is up there hanging over our head.
It is a liability.
But it's paid over time as the employee uses it.
But it's still money out of citizens' pockets. I mean, we can say that, but it's still money that's going to come out of citizens' pockets.
Somewhere in here, and I would like to go through each budget after we get through the preliminary discussion, where there's $32,000 in a line item to pay for unused vacation at this time. So eventually we'll get there.
Okay.
I've highlighted it. I just would like to go through it in order. One, I do have a question about the health insurance, the 50-50 split. Last year it was 40-60, correct?
60-40, yes.
So are you saying that part of that increase for health insurance or the savings is across the board for all employees?
Yes. Not savings. No, we're saving the city is.
I understand, but we pay for fire and police health insurance, correct?
All
City.
employees. Yes.
The problem is I don't see how you can decrease the policy for fire at this point. You have to say status quo.
Well, an interesting point is in the personnel policy, it was set at 50-50, but it wasn't being charged at that. It was being charged at 60-40. So that's an interesting point.
How long had that been going on?
And then also too, do we cover eyes in our health insurance policy? Because in our personnel policy, we pay $250 or pay for an eye exam anywhere in Brevard County for the employee every 2 years, and then we'll give them $250 for glasses every 2 years. So we have some serious issues with this personnel policy.
So let me get this straight. The personnel policy said we would pay 50-50, and it said that for quite a while. But we were paying 60-40 for quite a while, as long as you've been here, Brenda?
But I think the point is, how do you reduce it when you have a union contract with the police and we're in the process of negotiating with the fire department? I don't think you can do it without their approval or without.
It's not a negotiating issue.
It sure is.
No, it's not.
at this
I
point.
beg to differ. It is a policy that we didn't have in place, 50/50.
I would like you to look into that, Ann, because I think it is.
I will look into
part
it.
of
I will look
the
into
union
it.
contract.
Well, but it obviously hasn't been an issue. I mean, the police union didn't make an issue of it, right? Because it was a 50/50 policy. We just happened to be paying 60/40, but now we decided to stick to our policy and it's 50/50, and FOP hasn't made an issue of it. Because it's a policy.
I will check
Written
into
policy.
it.
Yeah, I would look into it.
Yes.
I don't have the union contract here, and I'm also concerned if you change things with the fire department. No matter what the policy says, if you change it, it could be a problem.
Well, I don't know. Generally with CBAs, it's stuff that's written that takes precedent over.
It's what is generally, I wrote it down because I talked to the labor attorney. I wrote it down to the labor attorney. I gotta make sure I get the wording right. What employees reasonably come to expect. What employees reasonably come to expect, including vacation, sick, and health. So if they've gotten
Status
that,
quo.
and that's what they reasonably expect,
Yeah.
then we can't change it.
Well, that's status quo is what
Yeah,
he's referring
status
to.
quo.
Well, then all these numbers have to be changed.
Yeah, they do.
So then we just lost all the savings.
We'll check into it. Okay. Ready for the next slide? Okay.
Sure.
Okay, this is the general fund budget summary, which is revenue. And the next page will be expenditures, so. Again, looking, you can see where it says rollback -1 or 8.3139 mils there, right in the center. And again, that is what the budget that was presented on the 8th of August, we're taking off from that point. So now you're looking then at option to the right of that, option 1, option 2, and option 3. And you can see the bottom line difference the different rollback minus whatever or straight up rollback will produce. It's pretty straightforward. Next page is the, nope, that's one too far. Expenditures. Well, what happened to revenue? That moved back pretty quickly. Let's keep it at expenditures then. Let's go to expenditure. And once again, we're working from the budget presented on the 8th, which is rollback -1. And again, we've got our insurance savings plugged in there, and that may not be accurate. We're going to have to double check on that. But what you end up with, as you can see with the reserves down there, and some of these figures are going to change then, are additions to reserves, and that's what I was talking about on the very first page when I jumped the gun talking about what the bottom line with reserves would be. One of the issues, if we needed to find a little extra, and we had discussed this at the last meeting with regard to the Public Works planner that we had set aside $25K as needed, you know, we could cut that down to $12.5. That is a possibility, and that would boost the additions to reserve, so that might be a possibility on that. And then the next slide, these are just a series of the decrease in the departmental budgets, which totaled up to the $39,861, beginning with the legislative expenditures, and that would be the less costly laptops. That's what minor apparatus is there. And then in the admin and finance, there was a reduction of about $700 in general government services, 2420. And what we did is last year the legal services in fiscal year 11-12 came in at $38K, and we upped that to I think it was 58,000 or 59, and then reduced that to 50 to come up with the savings in legal services. And remember, the need for codification is there for the 6,500 that we had just talked about at the last meeting. So we will have to take care of those services. With regard to police expenditures, I don't know if Chief Pearson wants to add anything, or if you have any questions on that. That totals up to $14,695. The next slide shows your fire expenditures, reduction of about $28.41. And then building and zoning at $417, reduction or decrease in expenditures. And public works, Alan Potter's department, at $16,437 reduction. And recreation expenditures, a reduction of $1,101. And those are actually the revisions and potential options from the last budget.
Well, anybody have anything else to say before we go through the budget?
Well, the only thing else that I wanted to mention, and I did send that out in an email to all council members, discussing the fact that we are going to be looking at pensions, discussing the fact that we're beginning to look at sick leave and various benefits to reassess where we are, because those are not sustainable. And you know, we need to delve into those, and that is a process. And even the incentives, and I've had the conversation with Chief Hughes about some of the incentives there that, again, we'd be looking at during the established union negotiations. So that would be the time to discuss those things. So, you know, those things in a nutshell are going to have to be dealt with as we move forward.
But are they going to be able to, obviously the fire union issue isn't going to be able to be dealt with in time for the budget, but are any of the other benefit issues going to be able to be dealt with in time for the budget?
Well, it's just like even looking at pension, it's a process. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and you have to have the pension attorney involved and the proper advice. No. And the answer is no. Short answer is no. The short answer is no. But that doesn't mean that you cannot be moving this process mm-hmm. ahead now mm-hmm. and even be able to implement it within the fiscal year 12-13. It just means you're not going to have it reflected in this budget right now because it's impossible to get that done and do it properly.
Yeah. Can I ask the police chief a question? Chief, do you see, I mean, obviously you came forward with 3 position cuts when somebody said that I wanted you to do it. I didn't say that I wanted you to do it, right?
No.
Okay. All I said was let's look at a 10% cut. I just want to make that clear because I keep seeing emails from people saying Billman's an idiot and he told the chief to get rid of 3 people. Did I say that?
No.
No. Did I say that, Ann?
No, you did not.
Thank you. So let's change the email train.
Please.
Yes, please. But you came forward with three positions, and obviously in your professional opinion you thought at the time that while it wouldn't be optimum, you could get your mission done without them. Do you see over the course of the next year any attrition happening at all in your department that you feel that you would not need to backfill?
I do. That's part of the plan. I have a strategic plan. There is one position that is going to retire, and that I'm going to elevate a person that's working part-time to full-time status and eliminate that part-time.
Is that reflected in your budget?
No, because
it hasn't taken place yet. Okay.
Yet.
But that is one of those things that in this fiscal year that may in fact happen, and
yes, and there's another one that may in fact happen that I don't want to get into because, well, you know how that works.
Yeah.
But okay. Yes, as I said, I have a plan.
I thought so.
And I'm
that's all I needed.
I'm
with you. We're simpatico, man.
I'm there. It's just I just want to do it the right way.
I do too.
And if you can,
I do too, which is why I didn't tell you to fire Brad and the other 2.
Right. And that's why you and everybody else said, hey, we didn't like that. We don't like that plan. And that was simply just, you know, hey, look, anybody can say, I want to see an option.
Yeah. Just like I said earlier, we have to look at options.
Let's look at what 10% looks like. So the city manager said, hey, let's look and see what 10% looks like. I said, this is what 10% looks like. She said, okay, well.
And I didn't say 10% of you. I said 10% overall.
No. And it was an option. We did it. We looked at it.
Exactly.
We all decided that wasn't a good option. We all decided that.
So
that
folks,
I have them-
let's get the information straight on the emails from here on out, shall we?
I have a plan going forward to do as much as, trust me, when we get to a point where I say, I can't do what I'm doing anymore with less, I will tell you. I have a plan going forward that there are some positions that, for attrition,
You can move
positions
it,
I can move.
reorg.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what you should be doing, and that's great.
And that's,
Good.
and I really, really appreciate last meeting and now and the things that are being said by saying, because what I'm hearing is, I trust that you're doing the right thing and we're going to let you do it. And that's important because I do understand where we are.
Yep.
I do understand the fiscal responsibility, and I'm very committed to doing that. And I believe that I can get us where we want to go if I'm allowed to do it the right way and the way I
There
think
you
it
go.
should be done.
Exactly.
Because I know the people and I know what the people need.
Yeah. Because there was quite a commotion in the room and lots of laughing when I asked where the $200,000 came from. And it wasn't so humorous because I didn't know where the $200,000 came from.
It's the telephone
So
game.
maybe we need to check our facts before we write emails or make phone calls or things like that.
You play the telephone game when you're a kid. You
Yeah.
whisper something, whisper something. By the time it gets to the 10th person, it's so blown out of proportion.
Thanks, Chief.
Yes, sir.
And the other thing, Chief, is that we have been discussing the RMS. Let's bring that out again here and the time frame with that. Would you please do that and the cost?
I will. 3.5 years ago, I went to Cody and said, we really need to get on board with this. And he said, boy, you're right, let's look at it, give me some information, do the research, blah, blah, blah. I did. At that point, almost every agency in the county already had this in place. We were just way behind. So we brought it forward, and that, unfortunately, right when that started, that conversation started, is right when the economy started doing this. And I can't be any more frank than the fact that I was told, yeah, that's not happening. It's too much money. It's not happening. I said, okay, I'm just telling you that we're going to get to a point where we need to have it. Well, then fine there, little guy. When we get to that point, then you let us know. And then the next year I did it, and we put out a grant request. And I said, okay, well, if I'm not going to get it this way, we're going to do doing it. The next year, put in a grant request. Didn't get funded. And I said, now we're getting to the point now where we're the only agency in the county that doesn't have it. And we're going to get to a point where we're going to have to do it. Yeah, well, you let us know we get to that point and we'll do something. But boy, the economy's bad. We haven't gotten raises. We don't have any money. We don't have any money. We don't have money. I said, I understand that, but I also have capital improvement issues that I have a plan and I have to do. And just like, I need police cars. You can't say, well, we don't have any money, can't have a police car. Well,
Police cars go in capital improvement plans.
Yeah.
If we had them, they would be there.
Yeah, which I have in mind. But,
Again, how the city ran without a capital improvement plan, I don't know.
So, I have my plan, but if the decision makers say, well, yeah, your plan's nice, but we're not going to fund it, then my plan's useless. I can have all the planning I want. If there's no funding with it, the plan is a piece of paper that...
Which is why it needs to be a city plan.
Yeah, citywide plan.
Right,
We can execute.
Correct.
But
Anyway,
speaking
the point is,
directly to this,
the RMS issue is the fact that it is going to be mandated on January 1st, 2013, which is just around the corner, that says the clerk's office is going to say and has said that they must have all traffic tickets given to them electronically. And without going into all the details, you've all heard it 100 times before. If there's any KPEG people in here, they don't want to listen to it for the millionth time because we had hours of discussion on this. But it's all being hand-typed. You can imagine the time. It's just, it's crazy.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
It's 2012 and we're keystroking. Anyway, so that's what they're going to say. Well, there's 5 or 6, depending, because people are moving forward with their capital improvement plan. And they're doing this. But not everybody's going to have it done. So with what's been going on now, with the issue that we have, with the fact that we now have a dedicated idea that we are going to have a capital improvement plan, I believe that we might be able to make it till the next budget year before we are absolutely going, we no longer get any revenue from tickets, we no longer write tickets, we're all just going to, get nothing.
But it has to go on the capital improvement plan this year.
So
For next year?
that would be optimum. It really should, yes. It really should.
Are there ways of purchasing, I mean, obviously, this will be a budget discussion item for next year, but are there ways of purchasing this system in concert with other PDs that we may be able to get it at a cheaper price?
Well, unfortunately, every other PD already has one. And they've all had it for years. India Atlantic, Melbourne Beach, there's like 2 people driving around, and they got connectivity, you know, I mean, every single agency in the county has and has had for a long time. And, you know, you know how life is. You can only go to your folks, your bosses, your people, your whoever, so many times, and have them tell you, we don't have the money so many times before you start to get to be, you know, an annoyance.
This is part of the frustration is we don't have a capital improvement plan, so we can't budget our money appropriately based on, we don't even have a maintenance plan for the buildings, which, you know, I'm sure they need maintenance. It's not a good situation. And then you have great technology that's coming out regarding fire, but the priority might be this system that you need because we're so far behind and we need to prioritize, and that's...
It's called an RMS?
It's
Yes,
really frustrating.
Records management system.
But with that said, in general, I know that I voted to set the millage at the rollback rate, but I do think we can do better. But I am also, on behalf of the citizens, very concerned about the amount of money that we have in reserve. So I think we need to figure out a way to work on this budget to do both, to be fiscal. And I want to make a statement. We're not the second highest millage rate. It didn't happen overnight. It happened over a long period of time, and we just have to keep chiseling and chiseling and chiseling and chiseling away at it.
It's not going to.
And I think that's what we need to do. And
we're not going to solve the issues that have built up over the years in 1 year. That's for darn sure.
But with that said, can we all go to the capital improvement part of the budget, because I would like to go over that first, since that's so important. Because I did go through this page by page by page.
The page is,
and it was not fun.
79.
Okay. Which is 79?
79?
Right? Capital assets fund?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
81, actually.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sorry, my book is twisted. I'm like, where is 79? Okay, thanks. And there's a few things. I think that what is happening is a lot of the money is going into departmental budgets that can probably stay in the capital asset fund. What happens when the money is in a departmental budget is that the money can be transferred without city council approval. So if we can kind of take some of this money and keep it in the capital asset fund, when there is a larger expenditure, then it needs to come to us, such as what the chief needs or the fire department needs. Because if you look at each department and you go under, on page 83, under administrative and finance, you have $4,000 for computers. Under police and computers and software, you have $4,000. Under fire department, you have $4,000. Under recreation, you have $4,000. And then above, you have $39,000 or $6,000 for police equipment. So what I'm just saying, with the computers and software, if you combine it, we probably need to come up with a plan for the entire system for servers and software and things, and prioritize them rather than spread it out over 30. Plus, you have to have, under capital asset, it has to be valued at $3,000 and have a lifespan of three years. So I just think that might be a better idea than dispersing it throughout. And then over time, we determine which departments are priority and purchase that equipment as needed. Is that making sense? And you also have general fund money that can be allocated to that as well. That, you know, you'll see throughout the budget, like under recreation, $1,200 for a new computer. So I'm just thinking if we can combine that, it would make more sense to.
Well, can I address that? This was an issue that KPEG brought up, and capital assets for those servers, anything that's over $3,000 gets allocated to capital assets, and that's why those servers are in there based on where they're located. So that server is in recreation, the server is over in PD, there is a server in City Hall, and so on and so forth. And this is the recommendations from KPEG.
To put it in the capital assets fund?
That's where they normally go.
No, I understand that part, but if the police department needs a server that's worth $25,000, or 20,000, you have it just dispersed over the 4 departments. You have to prioritize what our needs are.
Dispersed over 4 departments? What?
Well, you have $4,000 for
That's one server.
I understand that.
Yes.
I completely understand what a server is, and I know what I understand this, but you have administrative and finance, $4,000, police computers and software. Apparently, that's not going to get the chief where he needs to be with, $4,000. $4,000 for the fire department, and then,
Yes,
and maybe
this
I'm
is-
not explaining it correctly, but it's a capital asset fund, and we need to be looking at some of the larger capital assets that we need, because this is
Right.
what happens every year.
Right, and that's
Every
why-
year,
that's
the
why this-
departments come to us and say, take out another loan against the capital asset fund to pay for these larger items.
No, this is the recommendation from KPEG, and that's because our servers and our computer system is so antiquated and so old, and they have not been on the forefront.
I'm not saying not spend the money on the
No.
servers and the software. I'm just saying we need to come up with a master plan
Right.
for the entire city.
Correct.
And allocate that money based on prioritizations.
Right, and these were the priorities initially because they are so old.
Well, I think everything is old here.
Yes, correct. And this is KPEG's right now, and from talking to Chief Pearson, we could get away with one more year without buying that system for one more year.
But we need to plan for it for next year.
Correct.
And when we put together
Correct.
the CIP, that needs to be a primary.
That will be.
issue.
But we do not have to put it in this year's budget,
Yeah.
is what we're talking about.
So I hear what you're saying.
I'm probably not explaining.
No. I think I understand what you're saying. But the issue is these numbers are what we're going to have to live with this year. When we do put together the CIP, then yes, I agree. Those numbers should be reflected differently in next year's budget. Once we
Well,
get the
why
CIP.
does it have to be distributed for each department? Why can't it just be computers and software combined as one, and then based on that we prioritize and set policy which one's going to be purchased? I mean, it's like piecemealing. So this department's going to go buy some software, and this department's going to go buy some software, and this one's going to get a server, but it is one entity it's one municipality. It doesn't make sense. It all has to be compatible.
It's an accounting issue. It's so the total cost of each department, like safety, will have a total cost, and it's not skewed from year to year. So we know the actual cost for our public safety from year to year. And on our capital, we know we've spent X amount of dollars for capital for public safety. When we do our financial statements, we know we've spent X dollars for public safety, for public works, for recreation, or whatever. That's why it's allocated per department, not just overall computer equipment. It's by item. We have to depreciate each item by department.
So next year, when we do have a capital improvement plan, it will have to be reflected from an accounting perspective in the same manner
Yes,
as this.
Yes.
Because on the capital improvement plan, we're going to have by department what the capital plans are for that department over 5 years or whatever it is. And when we execute that year, or get ready to execute that next year, it's going to have to be reflected the same exact way.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
I think I get it.
I do have a question. Non-operating transfer to general fund, 11,850. Department head recommends, and city manager recommends. What is that, 11,850?
What page you on?
I'm sorry, 87.
87? That is for the small capital items that's in each one of those departments that was recommended by KPEG. I had included, like, for the small computers and your computer or laptops, that was not originally in the initial budget, and KPEG said that we should have, like, the computers or your laptops or whatever. I'm transferring that money back from capital into the general fund, and that's the total of that amount.
Then
11,800.
I understand where it is now in the budget, but why doesn't it just stay in the capital asset fund?
Because it's lower than $3,000.
I don't know if can you transfer that? That's the
Yes, you
question
can.
I want to know. How do you transfer a capital asset? A capital asset fund is very similar to, it's a trust fund. It's similar to the CRA. It's for capital assets that are valued at $2,999 or $3,000 that have a longevity of 3 years.
I think it's a year.
No,
A year, I'm sorry.
Right.
So
It's
how
a capital, anything that's a capital item, and we will depreciate that, but it has to have a value of $750 or more. Now, those items that are listed in the departmental budgets in capital, that's why they're specifically line itemed in capital. Within those budgets, they total up to that amount.
Yeah, well, I'm not, I would like that to be looked into. I'm sorry. I just don't think it's a capital asset fund and you're transferring it, and what you'll see in the other budgets is $400 here, $300 there. I get it, whatever you purchase is a capital asset, but it has to be valued at $3,000. Just because you transfer $11,000 doesn't mean the value of that item. That's not a tangible item worth $3,000. In other words, if you guys look at that $11,850, go back to one of the departments. I'll give you a page. I mean, our job is to do this and do it correctly, and I just have an issue with this after I went through it. If you go back, what she's doing is, what's happening is they're transferring $11,850 out to the department. So if you go to, let me find one. I'm not arguing the need for the computers or the servers. It just needs to be done properly.
All right, go to the police budget.
Yeah, what page?
Page 29.
Sorry.
So computers and software?
Yes.
$2,400, that's part of that $11,000.
Yeah. Yes. And so what I'm saying is, that's really not, it should be used out of the capital asset fund because it's not valued at $3,000. Taking the $11,000, transferring it to the general fund to pay for items that are not valued at $3,000. And this is the pickle we get in when we need a large ticket item. The money's not there.
But
like
the
$65,000.
But the classification, the .64 is a capital item. See where it says capital expenses on page 29?
I completely understand.
That's a capital item.
I completely understand.
So when I go to reconcile at the end of the year and show it to the auditors, I can say that is a capital item. Those transferred monies is paying for a capital item.
I understand. But what I'm saying is it's a capital asset fund, specifically for capital assets that are valued at $3,000 or more.
That's why I'm transferring the money to general fund.
Well, I think what she's saying.
I know, I understand, but that's why I'm explaining it, that it's going back to the general fund to pay for those
after
items.
the CRA issue, I just don't feel comfortable with it, and I'd like to be looked into further. And then I don't agree that a strategic plan at $25,000 is a capital asset. Put the money back into the, keep it in there for software, but I don't believe that's a capital asset, a strategic plan.
Okay, well, that's similar to banking fees that are in capital assets. That's not a capital asset either. It's not coded up as a capital asset, but it's still an expense in that fund. So at the end of the year, we account for it on a different line item and a different account number, and we segregate that differently in that fund.
I understand, but here's the deal. I don't want to be involved with the budget where we're playing a shell game and we're transferring funds.
We are being so transparent this year. We have never been so transparent, and we are getting so shredded. And I am so very upset at this. You have no idea. And,
Hey, Brenda.
and I am getting.
Hey, Brenda. If from an accounting perspective, if an asset is less than $3,000,
Yes, sir.
can it be reflected in the general fund, or by GAAP should it be reflected as you're doing?
Yes, this is the correct way.
Okay.
Yes.
But, when I asked about why the $25,000 was in there for a strategic plan, you just said because they did it the year before for the efficiency study. I'm sorry, and I want it on the record, I don't believe that it's a capital asset. I just want to do it appropriately. I'm sorry. So just because you did it last year, does that mean if we do it this year? Just because they transferred the CRA fund since 2003, I'm sorry.
I'm with you on that one, but I think.
And that 25 grand could be used for that service that, or server or technology, which is the biggest item that we need. And I'm not arguing about it, but I think there's we set the policy.
Yeah, and I understand your point with the strategic plan with that $25,000. We could allocate that in a different location, period, and put it toward the RMS.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, that's an issue.
I see that point a lot more than I see the $2,400, what are really capital assets that.
But when you go through when they allocate that, it's over 11. So you're now talking about, $36,000 that could be used towards a capital asset. Like the capital assets are big ticket items that typically the department heads come to us and say, hey, we need this, and we're like, where do we get the money?
So what you're saying is, I think I hear you saying that for those items that are capital assets, as far as hardware is concerned, not the $3,000 threshold,
yes.
But for those items that are below the $3,000 threshold that are capital items, you do not want to see them in the capital asset fund. You want to see them in the department fund.
I personally don't think, and there is nothing in our code about capital assets. There must have been an ordinance when we set up this trust fund that explains what we can and cannot expend money on. I guess it's just not in the code because we have it for the stormwater utility fund. I'm just concerned that it's really not a capital asset. And again, this shell game has been going on with maneuvering of monies, and we all know it's been happening, and a lot of municipalities do it, but it's time to stop and do it correctly.
Well, I think the one thing that we have to make sure of, because I am in no way, shape, or form an accountant, an auditor, or anything else, and I think that's where all of us may get into a little bit of difficulty making sure, because Brenda does know her business, and I've got to make sure that we're doing that right too. I understand your point about the strategic plan, and there may be some things we can do, and we will look at it, but I have to also rely on Brenda's expertise because she really does know what she's doing. Sometimes Brenda and I get together, and I'm here and she's here, and we finally get together as to how to explain something. She comes at it at a different angle because of her area of expertise. So we will look at that and see if there's anything that is appropriate to do it that way, and I think the strategic plan is that's a lot of money, $25K.
That's all I'm saying.
And I understand.
This council, even though I'm on here,
I understand,
is shell-shocked over the CRA issue, and we're cautious, and that's
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. I hear you.
And this is a workshop, and this is a long, tedious process. So let's get through it, and let's lower the millage rate and be fiscally responsible and build up our reserves and pay down our debt.
Go to the bar and have a beer.
And chip away. And I'm not done chipping, so bear with me.
I'm chipping.
Hey,
we're all chipping.
I set the millage rate at the rollback rate. Yes, you point all the time. How do you do that? I set the millage rate at the rollback rate, and I always said I wanted to do better, so let's do better.
Let's do better. I think we're doing better.
We're trying.
I think the options are there to do better.
Okay. Well, are we going to go through this budget now, or what? Are you over it?
Well, that was it for the presentation, and if you had any other questions or issues that you wanted to deal with, or if you are looking at a particular millage rate, because remember, with the exercise with the police department, that $171K, if you want a lot cut, you're going to be eliminating employees. That's a fact.
I have to be honest. I think I've done a pretty good job getting there without making cuts and chiseling away, if you'd like to go over it.
Please.
And this was very tedious for me. If you start at administrative finance, I want to discuss again. Oh, I'm sorry, 18. I don't think this council has really given any direction on the furloughs versus the 1% bonus. I have a grave concern with the furlough that it's time off, and the mayor said, well, people won't take the time off. It's basically work without pay. So I have a concern about the administrative running itself. If people choose to take the time off, they're going to take it. And then we don't have our department heads here. And I'm not one that believes in bonuses unless it's based on performance. So we've really never even...
And then we have changed that. It is based on merit. We do have the merit bonus, so to speak. And that's exactly what it's called. merit bonus.
I wanted to get some input from the council. I don't think that bonuses should be given out when 2 weeks ago we were talking about laying off 3 employees.
But this is from the department heads who are voluntarily doing this.
I understand.
I think it's a very innovative approach, and there were some caveats set after the initial discussion, and one of those caveats was performance.
Merit.
And the other, merit, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And the other caveat was it would go to employees who were making at or below the
49.5, which is,
the standard, or
that's what it is.
it's the average citizen's salary, median salary.
Thank you,
satellite
thank you,
BT.
median.
Geez, it's getting late. So, I know. Spit it out. So I
Well,
thought
then
that was
how
a very
do you-
innovative approach.
How do you then give someone who is below the $49,000 range in the fire department an increase, but not the rest, given we're in the status quo position?
Because that's the policy that council sets, and we set policy. And I think the 5 furlough days, we're talking 5 days over a 12-month period.
Yes, and how much, okay, somebody who's been here a long time, how much vacation time do you get a year? Look at Alan.
No, I get 16 hours a month.
A year. This year, how many vacations did you have?
How many vacations do I have today?
How many, no, days did you earn? Overall, how much vacation could you have taken this year?
24 days. 24 days. Well, a little under that is.
168 hours for the year. Good. Okay. Give me a calculator.
That's 4 weeks.
Add another week?
And I've been here for 23 years, times 4 weeks.
Add another week furlough at comp time, which we gave them 20 hours and 3 days and 8 days vacation. And
But that week furlough, they're not getting paid for. That money's going towards the bonus. It's not a week, it's 5 work days. But I personally didn't have an issue with that. But
Okay, well, it's
I
a
understand,
philosophical issue.
I understand your point.
And if our job is to reduce the millage rate.
Yep, nope, you're right.
I just have a philosophical issue. And then it's not, and I have to be honest, the pay free, when did the pay freeze come in? 2009, right? Am I correct? Most people had a pay freeze in 2005, decrease in pay 2006,
And then
furlough 2007, lost of jobs in 2008, when we were giving out raises. So I'm just not loving it there, but I'm just being honest. So this city was chugging along when everybody else was going down, and the pay freeze really hasn't been that long. 2009, 2010. Last year we gave you comp time. Anyway, that's just my opinion. So if you want to leave it in there, that's fine. But I was just trying to figure out a way to put more. I was kind of leaning towards a pay cut of the 5 days, but for the directors. But that's just my opinion.
So, now what?
A pay cut, put that back into the general fund or decrease the millage rate with that money in lieu of giving bonuses, 1% bonus.
You mean putting the department heads on 5 furlough days for the year and putting that money back in the general
Not
fund?
the furlough, but just a pay cut
Well, pay cut.
of the 5 days.
So what would that come out to?
About $15,000 to go back into the reserves or to pay down, to bring down the millage rate. Remember, you got to chisel away. And I just have to be honest, when you're talking about loss of jobs or layoffs, cuts, we've never made cuts. We've had a freeze, but we've never requested any pay cuts from anyone.
So that 15K you say is...
It's plus or minus, I think.
Okay, but that's, what you're suggesting is 5 days worth of whatever that came out to for a department head cut in salary. Okay.
Again, you have computers and software in there at 800. I guess that comes out of the 11,000 from capital asset. I'm still not understanding how you can just transfer it when it's really not a capital asset coming out of a trusted fund. And that one's pretty easy. General governmental services. Just had a question on retirement between 1112, 1213, the 394, page 23, 394, 594 versus the 271, 370. Is that 175, 185 money? No. No? What is that?
You mean the difference of 120,000?
Yeah.
Retirement?
Yeah. From 1112 to 1213,
Yeah,
there's
153,000.
120K difference.
Michael's not in there, and a couple of other employees.
Okay, so that's due to attrition.
Curious about the electricity, page 23, electricity costs are dropping. 1112, $182,000, and in 1213 recommended $123,000. I don't know about you, but my electricity is going up.
And how's that figured?
Well, that's interesting because in 1011 it was 123,499, and then spiked in the adopted budget 1112 to 182. So I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
Was over budgeted. There we go.
Oh. So 60, whatever, 59,000 came back into the budget, came back into the general fund? No, that we didn't pay that much.
Was never spent.
Right. Well, right. It never left. So we had,
What was the, okay, department head adopted, what was the actual, do we know, for electricity last year? It just,
I take it somewhere close to 123,915, which is why we budgeted it.
Well, for the adopted budget, we're not finished with the year yet.
But the estimate is close to what we have.
So the estimate is close to about 124.
So it's about the same as.
Yeah.
remember we were
Yes, so that-
transferring funds from the CRA to pay for electricity,
40,000.
67,000.
I'm sorry, 67. Yeah, so are we missing 67,000 somewhere? Is that your question?
I just want to make sure that our electric bill is covered.
So Brenda, as far as you're concerned, our electric bill this year is going to end up somewhere around 124, and that's without CRA money.
I couldn't hear.
Doing a lot of conservation.
Yeah, we just finished the Civic Center. We had actually, I had the inspection with the auditor from Tallahassee this morning on the grant, Civic Center grant. And that should bring some, I can't say significant, but some pretty good numbers as far as savings for the, new air conditioner, lighting, and everything that's going on.
So hopefully we'll come in even under this.
That'd be great.
And we made tweak the chiller at the DRS through that grant process as well, so realize some savings there as well. And it's a work in progress
Sure.
as far as trying to reduce
Again,
the cost.
we didn't get her overnight. We ain't going to solve it overnight, but baby steps.
Alan, didn't we have a lead, LEED leads guy that was working with us and stuff?
I know. I
Okay.
emailed a couple times, I haven't heard back from him, but
FIT graduate student or something, and he said he.
FIT grad student. So he's working by a company doing the same exact thing.
Okay, so that explains that one.
And then banking fees on page 25, you'll see banking fees over and over and over and over. Our banking fees seem extraordinarily high. We have 6,000 here, but then in other areas, you'll see more banking fees.
And what would those be,
At my
Brandon?
department.
Kind of. Banking fees.
Is that in every department like that, Brenda?
I
haven't
think
looked.
like under capital assets, under, the other funds. A lot of banking fee.
Is there a way to save on banking fees?
Yeah, like under capital asset, it's 700 for the banking fees, but $6,000 in banking fees?
Go back and analyze all the different fees and stuff. We have it's with Bank of America. All of, when I get with my finance directors, we'll talk about it, and they all doing the same thing with all of them.
Tuition, higher education. I don't know about you guys, but I think you should pay for your own tuition and your own higher education. It's $2,500 there. And then mayor's monthly cell phone allowance, $481. We don't get our cell phone paid for, so another $500 there.
Where's that?
Where are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. 26B, a year, sorry. We are volunteers, by the way. And he gets $100 a month for expenses and we get 50, so why a monthly allowance for cell phone? And then this one, I'm curious about, 26C, drinking water, all departments, $2,000, comes out to about 550 cases of water. Under 26C.
Mm-hmm. How come we do that? Isn't our water potable?
Here's some right here. All these council members drinking all that water. $2,000.
Well.
You gotta chip away at it.
Mm-hmm.
On to 30A.
Are you saying eliminate it? You're saying eliminate it?
Consider eliminating it. Consider eliminating it.
I just have a question. This is for Chief Pearson. The motorcycles are leased, correct? Our motorcycles are leased? Okay. And do we know if they were a capital lease or an operating lease? Don't know.
Operating.
Okay.
Chief, 12 copiers for $6,900?
Where we at?
30A. 12 copier rentals, $68.88.
Well, that's 12 months at $500. That's 2 copiers.
Oh,
That's times 12, so that's the monthly lease we got. But we're looking at that as well.
yeah, because I thought you told me you were thinking about going to one and
Yeah.
setting it in the proper position to,
The problem is Alan doesn't have his budget to put the door in that we need to maintain the security. So we can't do the copy because he doesn't have money to do it. And he doesn't have the staff to do it, so we have to pay
Look at
somebody else
Alan's
to do it.
face.
We don't have money to do it. So.
Alan, how
if
much-
we have the money, actually save money.
Alan, how much would it be to put a door in?
Oh, $5,000, because you gotta turn the wall out. It's not as easy as it sounds, because there are firewalls in the police department, there's solid
I'm teasing.
concrete. You have to
I
cut
refilled
out
this
the
bottle.
window that's there.
Okay.
You have to put in a fire rated
Okay,
door.
but even if it's $5,000, we pay it once, it pays for itself in 10 months. Or no, I'm wrong. It would pay for itself in a year and a few months, yeah.
Good deal.
Sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
Look at Alan, he's small.
Could we look at changing that? Put the money in Allen's and then cut yours by half, cut your copier by half?
I think there's a couple dollars different. You can't do half because one copy is different than the other.
You're getting good at this budget stuff.
No, I'm serious. But yes, it's pretty much
Yeah.
Sherry's got the exact figures, it's pretty close.
You know what I mean.
I know, but I just didn't want to,
Because there again, that's the gift that keeps on giving. Once we put the door in, now we're only paying for one copier. And it's $7,000 a year.
We have a lot of ideas, but it's not to take money.
Well, but if it's money spent now to save money in the future, that's the sort of things that we look at.
That's what we're doing.
Okay.
What's the copier tax? I had it wrong. I had a line drawn to 1,740, but it's 254.66. Copier taxes?
It's just a tax, like a city tax, it's a tax that you have to pay for renting the machine once a year.
Oh, machine rental. Got it. I didn't know what it was. And then, just a question about the bicycles. Do we have police on bicycles?
Yes.
We do? Okay.
See, another thing they laughed at me about.
What?
I said we should have police on bicycles, and people laughed at me.
Well, we have bicycle repair, upkeep.
Then why did people laugh at me? Don't answer that. Did I not say that during the campaign? And people go, oh, police on bikes, that's not going to happen.
Okay, well then that'll explain the shirts and for the bicycle cost.
Maybe laughing girls is actually on the bus.
Thanks for that, but that wasn't it. What's the software contract at $6,600,
That's USA software.
which is,
The maintenance for our CAD system that we have right now.
okay, will this somehow be usurped by the new system if we get it purchased next year?
Yes, but it'll go up.
30A.
Yay.
It'll go from 6 to 8 or
651.
8,500, depending on what we do, what system we'll have.
Okay, so this won't be rolled into that total cost? This won't be rolled into that purchase cost?
Yeah, first year will be, correct.
First year will be, okay.
Gosh. Oh, I just have a question. 34A, it says contract services volunteers. And then I assume it's just supposed to say contract services, not volunteers? I was a little lost there because it talks about the copier lease, air cards, tech support. It says it's supposed to say volunteers, contract services / volunteers? You have volunteers? I thought we don't have any volunteers.
They do have some reserve, as they call them. And some come from Titusville and so on, but they just ride. They do not fight fires. So they call them reserve, from what I understand.
How come they don't fight fires, I wonder? Because they're certified.
I don't know. Say if there's anybody here, but we had that discussion recently and talking about volunteers, and the way to have any kind of volunteers would be local community, Satellite Beach for quick response, but their reserves that they have, some come from Titusville and so on, and it's mainly a learning process. I think that's something that they do in fire departments, and you'd have to ask Don for sure, but I think that's the way they learn, and then they seek employment elsewhere. So
Well,
it's a kind of
I read an
training
article.
thing.
I read an article somewhere. I think the Orlando paper, or maybe Tallahassee, and it was talking about the thousands of certified firefighters that are out on the streets.
Wow.
And there are lots of fire departments. I'm not saying that we should do this, but I'm just saying that this is the fact. Lots of fire departments are getting certified firefighters as reservists or volunteers, whatever you want to call them. And they're hoping, they're hoping that they end up, with a permanent fire department somewhere.
Right.
But they want to maintain their skills and what have you. And there's the market is jammed with unemployed certified firefighters. So something to keep in mind.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You ready? You ready?
I am.
Okay, 34A, phone service, $1,128, but yet under general government services, we have phone service, all departments, $27,540. oh, sorry, page 26B.
No, I was on 34A. I think.
Yeah, you go from 34A, where the fire department's saying they need $1,120 per phone, yet on 26A or 26B, you have phone service for all departments.
Yeah, so how does that work? And so why is it reflected twice? Yeah, she's right, because it says monthly phone service, all departments, 21,450, 21,450, and then, was it 34? A?
Yes.
Is it emergency response maybe?
Just say phone service
It says phone
contract.
service
I would think
contract.
it's contract.
Do you guys know?
He did mention when he was doing his presentation that they would alert out reserves, so we need something like that.
We can check and see with him.
Yeah, so, yeah, discrepancy worth looking into.
Equipment maintenance, general maintenance, is that like I noticed in departments they have a contingency. Alan kind of, I think, did it on a percentage rather would say, general maintenance, he did a contingency, so I assume that $1,000, that's like the fifth line, is the contingency.
What page is that?
34B, but it's fire.
Yeah, it's fine.
And then motor vehicle maintenance, 34B, service contract E55,
I wish
E255.
Tony was still here.
No.
We don't have a service contract. Aren't we contracting with the county for maintenance?
I thought they did their own maintenance at the fire department. Do you know?
Fire department takes care of their own vehicles. There was a interlocal that they were supposed to have with the county, but that was pulled. That was the one.
Well, it was pulled because of the liability insurance issue.
Well, it hasn't been pulled yet.
Well, it was pulled off the consent agenda on the 31st
They're
of July.
still going through the liability issue.
So, yeah, it's not a done deal yet.
Right.
It should be.
Okay,
And
I've
it
got a
should go back
question.
on the agenda once they look. What they're concerned about is that they're servicing vehicles that aren't theirs.
No, I
And
understand.
so they're going to have to increase their liability insurance.
Yeah, and that's
And
going
they
to be
realize
reflected
that,
in our
yeah,
cost.
yeah, it's going to be reflected in our cost, but, that's $7,000 right there for a service contract that I don't really know what it's for.
Yeah, so that'd be worth looking into. And what about on 34A?
Oh.
We need to ask Donnie about the difference between radio maintenance and a radio service contract, because he's got 3,300 for one and 4,550 for the other one. And just reading it without knowing about it almost sounds like the same thing. So probably need to look into that.
Excuse me, I think that the radio service contract
Mhm.
is for the whole county, they each have a portion that they pay.
Okay.
And then the maintenance is the maintenance that we have to pay on the system per month.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, because one is 12.
12,
If you
yeah,
notice,
it
one
does.
is a unit of 12 and the other one's one, so that's, you're correct, it's 12 months.
Okay. So the radio service contract is a one-time thing that we pay,
And the other one's
Okay.
every month.
At $275 a month for maintenance. Total of $3,300.
okay? So the radio service contract, the one-time deal at 4,550 is paying for what?
So you're contracting with the county.
Okay. And then on top of that, we pay them another 275 a month?
Well, we pay a maintenance for our radios.
I think it's the system, you pay for the system, the 800 megahertz system, is that right? Yeah. Everybody buys into the county system.
Okay. It's a one-time payment. It's like a membership fee kind of
Right,
thing.
yeah, it's not maintenance on the radio system.
Okay.
Do people still use air cards?
They do.
They do?
Yes,
Okay.
they do.
Huh? Where'd that come from?
Transmit is when they hook up to a body and they have to transmit their vital organs or with their heart monitor
Okay.
to the hospital. So it's the air force. I know because they try to get it cheaper.
Okay, so 36. Can we move on to, or you got anything more? 36, the 26.2 for the planner. That's reflected there as well as on the capital
Let's
What
see.
page are you on?
6?
This is building and zoning.
Because I thought we had the city planner 25 grand in the capital assets fund, but yet it also shows, I assume that's it there as well on page 36.
Whoa, wait a minute.
No, this is the city side. The planner.
I thought that really should just be the 25 grand. I don't know why you have permit software and an annual license fee. If they're a contractor, we're not paying their
36.
license fees.
36, under description. It says other contract services on 36 in the description. And then in 37, it's under operating expenses, other contract services.
Yeah, because you have this $1,200. $1,200 is also on that line. Other contract services,
Mm-hmm.
building and zoning also has his permit software and annual license fee of $1,200.
Okay.
Well, that doesn't go, that shouldn't be included in that line item. If the planner is a contractor, we allocated $25,000 on an as-needed basis. If you need permit software and a license fee, that has to go somewhere else.
Well, and also, we're reflecting that 25,000 on page 86
Okay, hold on.
in the capital assets fund. So why are we also reflecting it on page 36 in the building and zoning?
Oh, yeah, it's 20, what page are you on again, Greg?
86. And remember, you had the whole discussion on the capital assets fund reflecting the strategic planner for 25,000?
No, that's just a strategic plan.
different.
So something different?
Yeah, it's really
Yes,
Okay.
different.
Okay, sorry.
But that line, that other contract services needs to get dropped down to 25. That's what we allocated for the planner. And then I guess if you need the software and annual license fee, it needs to be allocated somewhere else.
No, and that was where I suggested we could cut that in half instead of the 25K for the 12.5 for the planner as needed. So that is a possibility.
I don't know if that's a good idea, given the nonconformity issue that still is not resolved and all that other stuff. But,
And that being our number one priority for the CRA?
yeah, well, for the city, actually.
Well, I know, but
Yeah.
we did the goals
Yeah.
for the plan. So number one.
That was the only thing, the 26.2. I mean. Oh, and on the next page, you have it as other contracts, you have it as $25,000 on page 38, but
Right,
yet on the
broken
page
out.
before, you have it at 26.2. Okay,
Well, but then there's the 12.2
Right.
right underneath it.
right.
On page 40, Alan, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what do you think of that 156.7 for the fuel? What price did you base that on?
60. It's broken down in the next.
Yeah, the next.
in my breakdown. It's 360 a gallon for unleaded fuel.
Do we buy it in bulk?
Yes, we go through the Brevard County School contract.
And that, generally speaking, that's below market, how much?
Probably 50 cents.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But it's by volume, so
Right.
depending on how much volume we use, it's the rate that we get.
Right, okay. Because right now, the market's at 360, so we got 50 cents to go before we're...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and 425 for diesel, which is, the bulk of our fuel is unleaded fuel.
Okay. So that's as good a guess as any, I guess.
Alan, question on the traffic signal maintenance. I know we have a contract with Brevard County to maintain our signals. That's the
Right.
$7,000, right? The control box for Cassia,
Right.
did we do that yet or not?
Well, when I was asked to reduce more, I looked at places to reduce, And I took down all my contingencies by half or completely cut them out. And then I looked at that and spoke with the county and asked them if we could limp along for another year, you know, because they would like to see it replaced because they have to work on it. Because it is old, it's shot. But if we limp along for another year, and then when the DOT does the repaving and they do some new signalization, there's a chance we could get them to buy us a new box. So
I remember what I'm talking about.
I'm kind of betting on the come, you know.
That's coming up first of the year, later this year, the repaving of the A1A? Good project.
44B, Alan, this is for you. Field lighting, is that maintenance on the lighting?
Yes.
Okay, just, I didn't know if it was the electric or not. And then, AC, I gotta understand this, I don't get this. The AC and chiller,
Right.
and then the AC and chiller maintenance. I gotta understand. The AC and chillers up at the top,
Building
44.
grounds, that's for like filters and
Okay.
things like that. And then the maintenance is just that, maintenance.
Okay, and then cleaning DRS center, 40 grand?
Yeah, I'm hoping, we're doing the pre-bid walkthrough tomorrow. We're taking bids next week, so I'm hoping that it's going to come close to that.
Okay, and then operating, again, you have telephone system 300. Is that for the telephone bill, or, because we pay for that out of general operating, the telephone? And I know you're giggling, but when you boil this down, it comes out to about $250,000 of, that I've been able to cut out of the.
No, the telephone system, yeah, that's for, if we have any issues with our phones in the office, we have to call the our business cell phones in to repair them.
And so one of the things overall that I'm very frustrated with the budget is a lot of these things are general operating expenses, and they really should have been just, it's very confusing if you guys sit and look through this budget because it's kind of overlapping, and it's just frustrating. So anyway, we'll keep plugging around. Recreation Department.
On the recreation under printing, we have $6,000 for printing activity flyers.
We have 3 printings a year, about 3,500 copies, 3,500 copies, and 5,000 copies. We're going to Pride this year, and that reduced that quite a bit. And we've also reduced our number of pages from 20 this fall to 16.
Okay, so we saved $2,600, it says here, by going with Pride. So that means it used to be $8,600?
Yeah.
There's no other way to get that information out, huh?
You know, more and more people are using our website now, our page.
Yeah.
They'll call and go, oh, look on the website. So I suspect that real soon we'll start putting out maybe just a one-page sheet with highlighting a few things back and front and sending those out to the school. And I'm sure within a couple of years the whole paper thing will be obsolete. People look for the paper thing now, and they just walk in with it.
We couldn't do that now? We couldn't go to the one-page thing now?
It'd be a little uncomfortable doing that, only in that we're trying to maintain our income coming in, and if we make a big adjustment like that, I'm afraid that we would lose our customers. We could potentially lose customers without losing income. Summer's huge for us. If we don't have that flyer out in the summer,
Yeah, and I know it gets distributed in the schools, and I've always complained because Danny comes home with one and Damon comes home with one. They're both in the same school. But, you know, the schools are paperless. We're paperless. So I'm not sure why we can't be paperless when it comes to getting the rec info out. We get no paper home that comes home from the school.
how do you get your information?
Go online.
But again, maybe a baby step to doing that would be to going to the one-page issue now and have the website on there so people could kind of get an overview of what's going on, and then, have the website to go to that. And I bet you we could do that for a lot less than $6,000. So why don't we just look into that?
I know you've been over this, the program instructors, $323,000. I'm just still floored by that number. And then probably a combination question, maintenance, buildings and grounds, $630. That'd be in your budget, Alan? Maintenance of buildings and grounds?
A lot of things that should be in my budget that are in my budget.
No, I'm just curious.
No, I'm just saying that, we do support a lot of all the other departments.
But it's in recs, for maintenance, building and grounds, $630, but your responsibility, correct? Page 47?
Question.
We still do cleaning supplies, not Alan's type cleaning supplies, but I'll still take cleaning supplies for our tennis court monitors. They clean the bathrooms, so they'll use Windex, toilet cleaner, they put brooms at all the facilities, we do mops and buckets at all the facilities, paper towels at all the facilities. So rather than putting that in Alan's budget, that's just little stuff that comes out of my budget.
I saw there was a line item for that. Sorry, there was a whole line item for cleaning, but this is maintenance of buildings and grounds.
There's a line item on my budget for janitorial supplies.
For what?
Janitorial supplies.
Yeah, it was pretty
Big one.
common. I didn't argue about it.
Well, that's why we were trying to break out those costs that were presented at the last meeting too, so that you could look at some of those cost centers and see where, Alan was doing that work, and the Recreation Department, like you said, you do it in other locations as well.
Along those same lines, Alan's budget will have bases for baseball fields, and I have the tennis court nets. Makes no sense, it should be in one or the other.
Yeah, we need to work on that next year, because it needs to make sense.
For next year.
It almost seems like it should be in recreation. Don't you think that?
No, they need to know when it's time to do data.
She buys them, she tells me to put them on.
But she's spending the money, so.
Or the league is spending the money, maybe.
But they should all be in one spot, I think.
You can imagine looking at this document, and it gets confused. It's hard to, I'm just questioning some of the overlap. And then I need to ask this, boat drivers on Sundays, a boat driver on Sunday. That's to clean up Sampson's Island, to clean up on Sunday?
Oh, yeah, Public Works tries to get out once a week, and if they don't go out on Sunday after camping, and hit all the campsites, empty all the trash, take it off the island, look for any repairs that need to be done. We have one boat driver, and she supplements with a volunteer every Sunday. And also a lot of the BCC kids and high school kids are volunteering.
Is there any way that we could share that with the police, the citizens on patrol? I think they're the guys who drive your guys' boat every Saturday and Sunday morning.
They have a marine patrol boat. We
Yeah.
have a working pontoon boat.
Right. But you can't drop people off with that. I mean, I don't know, it's probably minuscule money,
Well, we
but
don't need people on the island without a boat out.
Oh, here it is.
because I see your guys out every morning when I'm out reading the paper, Saturday and Sunday morning, 8:30, they go puttering by.
Yeah, we get calls about that all the time from people who love the water. They love it. I had a big meeting at Lansing Island Homeowners Association a few nights ago, and they said the same thing.
Well, I tell you what goes through my mind when I see them. I'd much rather hear them or see them out there at midnight, 1, 2 in the morning, when things could be going on in the canals, and they have gone on in the canals, versus Saturday or Sunday morning at 8:30.
They actually did. They get rid of
Okay.
the go till the volunteer ring show goes till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Maybe that's what that dog is doing, barking all the time out there. See, I was going to call the cops, but they were the cops.
Okay, moving on. 48B, and I just have to understand, program instructors based on $400,000 income, we pay out $323,000, is that correct?
what we take in depends on what we pay out. If we have really successful programs, we might end up taking in more, in which case we might be paying out more. If we have a bland year and we take in $350,000, we could be paying out as much as we do. Make sense?
I guess it varies. And then I'm not a dancer, obviously. Auditorium rental? What auditorium are we renting?
We rent the High School Performing Arts Center.
Oh, for the, okay, the
annual
recital.
And then our structure, our independent contractor reimburses the city.
And then I noticed too, down the bottom of 48B, then you have the cleaning supplies, which kind of ties into, I guess, maintenance of building. So you have 630 and 270 for that stuff. And then again, it's the overlap. You pay for the mulch for the dog park, because he has a line item for all mulch for all city. Alan does.
Yes, but I have Stephanie.
You have,
The dog park, and she likes the entry area to look really, really nice. So I'll go and buy a couple bags of mulch, which look really, really good, and sometimes I'll buy 3 and you buy 1, and we keep them all.
But if it's, Alan gets it cheaper because you buy it in bulk, don't you, Alan?
Yeah, and well, we have a great deal now with Walmart, because one of our former employees works at Walmart, and he calls me with a pallet of broken bags of dirt.
Oh,
broken
great
bags of
idea.
mulch. So I'll hook you up.
This one cracks me up. $2,100 for poopy bags. That's a lot of dog poop.
I know, and I'm going to tell the people to start bringing their own bags. They can bring them from home.
Here we go. Tell them to bring their, that's what I do. I grab a bag and, well, I did before she died.
And then again, just when we go back to the capital assets, you have 2 computers here at $600 each, so that $1,200 was transferred out from the capital asset fund. I'm not arguing the need for the computer, I'm just arguing it the way it's budgeted.
Sure.
We have volunteer computer classes, or no, we have computer classes that are run by volunteers. I think we have 3 or 4 teachers this year. They receive no compensation. They don't want to receive compensation. So in lieu of paying them, they ask if we can continue buying items so they can keep making the computer classes upgraded. So they've been switching out to laptops so that they can get 6 people at a time on laptops.
And then also too, when she mentioned laptop, to me, you can take the $3,000 out for legislative laptops. I could care less. If you guys want to use your own, I'll take a paper copy. I don't know, Scott, what you prefer. You're always on the road.
Yeah, I think we need to do away with that.
But I need a paper copy.
What are the costs, Lenore, for paper? I don't, annually for,
You can look under operating expenses under the office supplies. We can get that later.
okay. I'd be real curious to see the comparison.
And then I think last is just the stormwater fund, correct?
Well, no, I had some questions.
Oh, you do?
I had some
Okay. questions
questions on the intra-fund transfers, but they're not questions that I think there's something wrong. It's just I don't understand.
Okay.
The sellback of sick and vacation time per labor contract personnel policy.
Hold on, that's in here somewhere.
What's that mean?
Well, people that's been here over like 10 years, they could sell that, like 2 weeks worth of vacation sick, but they catch it and use like 2 weeks
Oh, here it is.
of vacation, or there's other requirements. and
32,000.
Union contracts and stuff, so that's what it is.
I have that highlighted too. I apologize. It's just getting late, but it's on page 51. So we have budgeted $32,000 for sellback, and I read the personnel policy today, and that sellback occurs in December of every year. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. But we're limited now because we still have that personnel policy in effect, and that's yet another reason to...
Well, and then remember, personnel policy, when you change it, it's done by ordinance. That has been what has been the past practice.
Well, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
And then I take it the general fund tax revenue portion of the CRA, that's our portion of the TIF going to the CRA. Good. Okay, and then the 35, I understand. Okay.
Right.
That's it.
And then services.
Now, where do we get reflected, oh, it's probably in the CRA budget. I was going to say, where do we get reflected the county portion, that comes in the CRA budget.
Correct.
Okay, just page 63, now we're in the stormwater utility fund, which is also a designated fund, by the way. Transfer to general fund for public works stormwater maintenance workers. And for salaries out of that fund?
What page is that?
Page 64.
Oh, you said 53.
Third line down. Transfer to general fund.
Right.
$98,996.
That's right, and if you look, this is one of the other issues that was brought to the attention in this budget. Let me see. Brenda can explain that better than I, however, I'm trying to find the general fund.
That's for the two employees that maintain.
Okay, here you go.
The stormwater system from Public Works.
Like the back truck and those type of things?
Yeah, and clean up the system there in stormwater. That money goes back to the general fund to pay for their labor.
Right.
So you only have 2 people dedicated to stormwater?
Actually, I have 3. One of them right now is babysitting that project out there.
Oh, I thought they're doing construction services? I thought Quentin Hampton was doing that.
We take care of, because we and on every city project, we would have a public works employee to make sure that the residents are taken care of. If you have somebody and you save a lot of money that way too, you know.
Doing change orders or whatever, yeah, okay.
Well, no, I'm just talking
But just so
about-
they don't have to do the management.
Oh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, we do our own construction management on my contract for the same exact reason. It's a lot cheaper.
You get a better job that way too.
Yeah.
Because you get somebody who really cares about it.
Now, my only concern is these are trust funds. Stormwater utility is a trust fund. Do you document these hours and the descriptions?
Not a
And,
trust fund. It is not a trust fund. It is not a trust fund.
well, in the ordinance here, which is ordinance 5214, stormwater utility fund, it shall be held as a trust fund of the city.
It is a special revenue fund.
Well, then we might have to amend this ordinance if it's not correct.
For accounting purposes, it's a special revenue fund, not a trust fund.
No, then we need to look at
Yeah.
for section 5214 of the code, because it specifically says it's held as a trust, and it specifically says what the expenditure shall be.
And what is the ordinance number?
Section 5214, stormwater utility fund. The ordinance number would be 681, adopted 1/72/97.
And I take it that's allowed we're allowed to pay for salaries out of that fund if the people have something to do with that fund, kind of like the CRA, we're allowed to pay certain.
Yes.
Okay.
As long as the council approves it, yes.
Okay.
And that also appears on page 2 under the general fund expenditures there that had not been shown in prior years for 98,996. So just so you know, there's the connection there.
Okay. Hey, before we move on any farther, page 53, it has additions to reserves.
What page, I'm sorry?
53.
53?
Mm-hmm.
And we're showing 170, 755. Was that just a ballpark based upon the, either going rollback minus 0.5 or rollback minus 0.1?
Page are you on?
53.
Yes, that was just.
That was just a placeholder.
And that was 181,920.
For this budget, for the budget presented. Mhm.
Yeah, so it'll come out to be one of the, well, it's not up there.
Well, and we do have to check the health insurance too to make sure.
Okay, okay. Does anybody figure what that differential is? The difference in last year's payment and this year's payment?
I don't know if you want.
For what?
Like a 6,000% difference?
Well, I think it was about 2,700%, something of that
difference, yeah.
nature, yes. I did.
Oh, here, I'll keep it. I'll just email it. So just one other thing, Ann, because, we have a section in the code regarding the stormwater utility fund. Can we do, Lenore, you might know, the capital asset fund, was there ever an ordinance adopted, or maybe it wasn't codified, or, I looked, I didn't. You might not. Okay, wait. Okay, it's just unusual that it's not in the code.
Yeah, so that you wanted to know what the capital assets fund was, what ordinance?
And then also look into this, if the money's not held in trust, the code says that it should be held in trust, so something needs to be, either the ordinance needs to be changed or we need to be doing something differently. And I think that's the end. Yeah.
Anything else?
Oh, the banking fees too. Again, under stormwater utility, there's $3,000. We're paying like, what, 20 grand in banking fees every year? That's it. Can't touch the CRA. We did capital assets, and that's it.
No, we can't touch it, but man, there's lots of concerns.
CRAs?
Yeah.
We're going to have another meeting, a CRA meeting before the final budget numbers. So, okay, want to do some public comment? Public input?
Sure.
A lot of stuff there. Okay. You only got 3 minutes.
No, I don't like numbers.
Start with Vic. Go ahead. Name and resident.
As a long-term certified firefighter resident of 140, that's 140 Park, P-A-R-K Avenue in the city, may I apologize to Madam Clerk for my totally inadequate public speaking skills related to other speakers. Having said that, fire department is an 800-pound gorilla because of the unveiled threat of unionization. I, as a long-term knowledgeable person of fire suppression, say that $60,000 is foo-foo, and I have knowledge and experience to back it up. Second, capital asset fund, to me, is a trust fund, should be treated as such. May I suggest humbly that we try to build reserves. Reserves are big, big, big in economic downturn, which we have. Finally, Florida Statute 163 allows for non-operating expenses, not operating expenses. And may I conclude by saying that I apologize to Madam Clerk for my totally inadequate public speaking skills relative to other speakers.
Okay.
Pat Gibbons, resident. There's a couple different subjects, I guess, or different avenues here. Things that, and I like the way you guys are going through the line items of the budgets and seeing where we can cut or deal with immediately, and then we have things that we're looking to do long term. But I really hope that we at least set the plan for those long-term things. Mm-hmm. You know, at a workshop, a meeting, a KPEG meeting with you guys, something. For instance, like the booklet Carrie was talking about, I think that could be an immediate thing. My wife Connie is really not a computer person. She's never worked in an office, although her office has been a pool all these years. But she's learning computer from Aiden, and she loves that booklet Carrie was talking about. She's right. They come home with that booklet, they sit down, and they go through it. But I think that if she had a piece of paper that referenced computer links, that she would do that. Mm-hmm. You know, because the most important thing for her is getting Aiden signed up for those classes, and she'd figure out a way to do that. I think that could be this year's savings. I really do.
You don't forget the poopy bag.
That's for sure. And I've been spending a lot of time up there in that area, and I think that, well, a lot of people don't use them anyway, but yeah, I think that would be an immediate. The dog park and skate park, I really think that we can immediately stop monitoring those parks. I think that we can do it on a volunteer basis, and we can have the people pay online on a yearly basis, or we can put a box in there. I've talked to a dozen people over the last couple of weeks, and they do it this way in all of other states. The county doesn't even monitor it anymore. Now, again, that park is what, you know, people like that park, and it's a great dog park and skate park as well. But I really think that's something we could do, and I think it's going to be about $38,000 we spend between those two parks with employees up there. But again, I really would defer to Carrie for that to be, you know, she's got more knowledge on that than I do. But that's just been my observance, and we have talked, this was a KPEG issue that we've talked a couple times about. The Sampson Island, I would look to the Sampson Island board to maybe get volunteers to do that, possibly save that money. And then the police door, I guarantee you on a weekend we could get contractors in the city here and people up there and put in that door. Far less than $5,000. I just know that that's one of the things we do in this town, and people would love to help out and do that. Thanks.
John?
John Fergus, 135 Maple. I'm going to reiterate again, we really ought to go for rollback. If you cut now, that is going to reduce the baseline for next year's rollback. However, you already have deferred the RMS to next year, and I'm sure there's other things like fire training that's been deferred that's not in this year's budget. Therefore, if you do find these wonderful savings that you have found, just put them into the reserves with the idea that they'll be there next year when you find that you're spending $250,000 for an RMS, or $60,000 or $80,000 for a fire suppression system. That way you start today to save for something you need tomorrow, and it also keeps the rollback rate next year a little bit higher so that the baseline that you can claim your savings from that year will be a little bit higher so you can show more savings next year. And as an aside, because of the comments about ripping into employees' benefits, I now have twice heard, and the one council member not here also heard last week, from staff the statement that they used to be considered an asset, and because of the comments and actions of a current council, they now consider themselves a liability. And you know what? That puts their morale into the toilet, and they begin looking for jobs elsewhere. Thank you.
Ron Jagutis, resident. It strikes me that when we discuss pensions, that is a form of debt. But it is pretty simple economics, even though we're not there right now. If you pay into the fund more, you reduce the liability and therefore gain. And I don't think I need to add any more to that. We have a lot of issues with the budget, obviously, tonight. I had a different approach to looking at it, but now some of the numbers have changed, and I don't think it is appropriate tonight to set the final budget because there needs to be a lot more homework done. And that involves all, including council, to perhaps write down their things now going forward and submit them if they see something line by line item for especially the two council members who have not been here. And perhaps it's time for another budget workshop, unfortunately, to get to that point. And I understand what Mr. Fergus is talking about, or John rather, if I can refer to that. He's talking about baseline, but let's find out what we have here and continue on with this process and perhaps have another workshop. This is a big thing to go through this process. And if things change next year, we will have a better chance of doing things, but we will have established a line here where we know where we're at and everyone understands. Thank you.
More public comment? Okay, if you're done with this portion?
Well, I have some
Are we finished with
comments.
this? Okay.
With respect to the skate park, I mean, the kids pay a pretty steep fee to be an annual member there, and I think the offset really between what is brought in and what is expended on that is very minimal. And I don't agree with leaving children, young children, unsupervised. It's, I think if you go back and look at the analysis that was presented to us at the last meeting, it's very minimal compared to what's being brought in and what is actually expended. How much? 16. No, I don't. It's not 16, not for the skate park, but I think there might be some light for the skate park.
For the
In the report that you gave us at the last meeting, not in the actual budget.
I think I'll be bringing in about 5,000, and we should be spending. About 15. So we're spending about 10,000 down there for staff.
Just on the skate park?
It's at a low slump right now.
Okay, well, I think that if you leave it unattended, then it should be a free skate park. And, you know, just sign a waiver and you skate at your own risk.
What about liability?
Sign a waiver. I don't think that we have deferred the RMS until next year. It's not a new issue. It's an old issue. I'm sorry, we have not deferred the RMS issue at all. We're actually trying to figure out a way to put it in a capital improvement plan so that we can pay for it.
Like I think the chief said, that was a can that's been kicked down the road for many years. And we're just trying to get it into a capital improvement plan.
Wow.
So to say that this council has deferred this until next year is simply not true. The morale issues at City Hall, you know, I hate to go back a year ago to the election, but with all the negative propaganda regarding Councilman Billman wanting to cut the police and fire, and Cheryl Dina wanted to cut the police and fire, and Pat Gibbons wanted, you know, that caused a lot of the morale issues. You know, we're just trying to sustain this community, be fiscally responsible, and bring down the millage rate so that people can afford to live here. And there's, you know, there are other municipalities in this state that have police, fire, and the same amenities that we do that don't have a millage rate as high as we do and the debt that we have. And that's all I'd like to say about that. So, you know, if morale is so bad, then go find a job elsewhere. I'm sorry, but I don't think it's that bad, and the morale issue is not being caused by trying to decrease the millage rate and to sustain this community and our levels of services. Like I said, I personally agreed to the rollback rate with the desire to decrease it even more, but I also agree that we need to start putting more money in reserves, that we're duty-bound to do that for the citizens of this community. If there's a natural disaster, which it's pending, it's eventually going to happen, we need that money in reserves. So with that said, I think we need to give the staff some direction, and I think we probably are. And it's unfortunate, it seems like I was joking with Scott earlier, I'm getting fat sitting here all the time. I'm about exercising, we've had so many meetings, but we might have to have another workshop. Staff has done a great job. reducing the budget, and like I said, it's like a chisel. You just have to keep chipping away at it. It didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to go down overnight. And taking into account some of the suggestions we made, maybe we go back to the rollback minus 0.5, and then put the rest of that money in reserves.
Well, I have to agree with Councilwoman there. Let me tell you what would really hurt morale. What would really hurt morale, and if people thought about it, it should be hurting their morale, would be if our city got to a point where debt drove us into requirements for mass layoffs or bankruptcies. There's lots of cities around this country.
In Pennsylvania.
There's lots of cities around this country where that is a reality. Go ask their employees or former employees what their morale's like. What this council is doing is trying to turn around the trend of the past and trying to bring the city into fiscal responsibility to protect the employees of this city. Actually, to protect the citizens of this city, and by virtue, protect the employees of this city. The fact that the unfunded retirement liabilities of this city have doubled in 4 years, and the OPEB has tripled in 4 years, the implications of that should affect these employees' morale. We're trying to turn that around. Their morale should be high because we're trying to turn that around. We're trying to maintain this city. And that should bring their morale up when they think about the implications of that. And I agree. I think we should go to rollback minus 0.5 and take the excess and put it into reserves, because reserves is a huge thing. And the fact that we are increasing reserves by 2,700%, I am very, very happy with that, and good work on you guys' part doing that. I think, however, that maybe we do need another, what are we doing here? Workshop. After taking into account some of these inputs that we made today. Maybe go back as a staff, sit down and see what's doable and what's not. Can we do the poop bags? Can we do the, I mean, seriously, that stuff adds up. And some of those things are multi-$1,000 issues. And maybe we have another short workshop to see what's the art of the possible on the inputs that we made tonight.
Now, I would actually like to see it done differently, where you show the change in the budget. And, I know it costs money to print it, but we've been working on this for a long time, and just show where the changes are so we can go down it and do it quickly. It was pretty painful to get through the budget and go back and forth and try to figure out where there were deductions. And I think that staff needs to be here to answer the questions when we want to know what a line item is as well, because, we don't understand all the line items, and we need to if we're going to approve the budget.
Like the fire chief tonight?
Yeah, it would have been good if the fire chief today. We had a lot of good questions. And may I also bring up that I think somebody brought up out in the audience about the KPEG and how that kind of got this ball rolling. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't, I don't know if we have to put it in the budget. We probably don't, because I don't think we spend any money on it really. But I think we should make an effort as a council to have an ongoing KPEG. Not to the same depth and all that kind of stuff, but kind of an ongoing effort to continue to help find efficiencies.
Can put it on the agenda, next agenda.
Yeah. Scott, could I just say something? When I talked in a few days' time with every KPEG member, there are a lot of the things that you've heard tonight that we've actually implemented. For instance, Carrie's working toward, 75-25% with the instructors. She's making changes there. We're looking at other user fees. We're looking at sick leave and pensions, and the RMS now has been brought up and discussed again tonight. Looking at the CIP and future planning, the personnel policy, competitive bids. We're already doing some of those things. And also the other issues to look at, the regulatory requirements, contractual requirements, and also the community values. All of those things have an interplay there. And it was interesting to talk with a number of KPEG members, because individually and hear how they wanted a number of the services maintained as well. So, and also to look at, the incentives like we talked about in the fire department, quarterly actuals, to continue a high level of services, and also to provide opportunities for citizen involvement. So those are the things that I heard from all of those members, and we are working toward that. But again, Rome wasn't built in a day, nor was it destroyed in a day, and it does take some time. And that's not an excuse, but if you rush to certain things, you have to have the proper assessment as well, and you will make the wrong decision. So I think it's important for us to continue forward with some, with the KPEG idea to keep those issues on, and maybe more efficiencies will be noted, more issues can be brought up.
And along those same lines, I know the chief has a long-term plan for his department. What's that? It's a 3-year or 5-year plan? Is that kind of what you?
Well, there's a couple people on the bubble, so I say 3 to 5.
Because you had said something like that, 3 to 5.
There'll be significant turnover in 3 to 5, and it's going to help you really shape. That's an immediate long-term issue.
Yeah, but my point is that you have a plan. You have a 3 or 5-year plan.
Well,
I would like to see other departments 3 or 5-year plans.
But I think the fire department has one as well, and I just don't think they've been articulated, and I think that's what we need to do.
Exactly.
Is articulate those.
There's no doubt that it's up here in some of those, I'm
Right.
sure, in some of those folks' heads, but it would be cool, it would be good to see it written down, kind of like a capital improvement plan. It'd be nice to have something actually written down that we could look at and execute over the years.
Mm-hmm. Just one thing I just get sensitive about when I'm talking about people and their careers and their lives. I know the plans, and I talk to these people, and I know where they are and where they need to be guided to go, when, and those kind of things. But when you put in paper that in 3 years this person's going to retire, and it's almost like you're telling them you're no longer any good. When then they say, well, maybe I'm going to do 4 or 2. Well, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I say 3 to 5, and I know where people are, and I talk to people, and I'm into all the people, where they want to go, and everybody's the younger to the older. The only issue with writing, you know what I'm saying? You put that in a document, it comes public record, they go, oh, that sergeant's going to retire? Yeah, that's me. Well, I was thinking about it, but I'm eligible, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a little tough.
Maybe it's more of a, well, and it's a concept, it's a working concept between the department head and the city manager, and the city manager tells council, hey, police department has got a plan, the plan's being executed, fire department has a plan, the plan's, maybe it's that sort of a thing.
I personally like that. I think that's...
But you get my point. We need a plan. We need plans. We all need plans.
That is correct.
And you have to understand too, and even the maintenance of the buildings is becoming an issue. I'm hearing complaints about the Schechner Center now, even though the loan hasn't paid off yet, that it's starting to deteriorate. So we need to be able to budget for that in the future. The painting of the floor in the fire station, the maintenance of the buildings, all needs to be budgeted. And I hope people realize what happened. I felt like when I was first on city council, I was being bombarded. We have a capital assets fund, and everybody was coming to us trying to pull out of that capital asset fund. We really need to come up with a plan and make sure that our city is maintained and all the needs of all the departments are met. And that's what we're trying to do. And the capital improvement plan, CIP, I've said it since the beginning, requested it. It didn't exist. We need one. And then our budget can reflect these big ticket items, then where the money is coming from and what year, because it's really important. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's something we need to spend some money on and pay for and get it done quickly. So maybe the fire thing doesn't happen this year, but it's budgeted for 2 years out because the technology is new, but his system is more important to the community. We have to prioritize.
Well, and I think you're right. And if the RMS is a requirement, that's not something that can be ignored.
Mm-hmm. Can the KPEG work on capital improvement plan? I'm sure you probably got something. That's a great idea. Yeah. I know when we have these committees and things, I know that even the Blue Ribbon, we met and we went through it, and then until we dissolve it, it's there. So I know then the members are pretty active in city council meetings. So
I bet you there's a few KPEG members who know what a CIP is supposed to look like.
All you have to do is pull any municipality up, and there's a CIP there. I mean, pull anyone up around us, and there's the capital improvement plan on their webpage. So.
Okay, we need to move on. Got 2 more things to do. We have a C is general fund budget summary, and D is departmental backup. Do need
We
to-
actually did all those.
We did all those.
We did.
We did.
We forged right forward on that.
We have, I have written on the 5th of September, a budget meeting. And then
That
we
is
have
the first
final-
hearing.
Final budget is the 19th.
That's right.
Do we need to recommend whether to have another budget workshop? Should we think about it?
How about-
Get other member input? I know Lloyd and Joe probably want to be.
Well, we say we're going to go back and look at, y'all were going to go back and look at the inputs that were brought up tonight.
That's correct.
Do we need a workshop to resolve that, or can that be resolved through?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
That answers that question. Now, the problem is, not the
Better.
problem, the issue is when.
Aren't you going to be gone next week?
I'm gone on Wednesday and Thursday next week. But I can Skype in maybe.
Well, I'm unable to be here on the 29th. It's my anniversary. Sorry.
All right. Come on.
I'm sorry.
For the city.
No, I'm sorry.
Well, just pick a day next week, and except for the 29th.
That's correct. Thank you. Unless, of course, you want to meet without me, but
Wasn't the permanent city manager selection committee possibly meeting on the 30th, so I think that might be.
yes, they are, in fact.
On the what?
That day's taken Thursday.
30th. So it leaves Tuesday,
Potential for that.
Monday or Tuesday.
No, I don't like Mondays.
Tuesday it is, 28th.
Tuesday the 28th, you'll be here?
Mondays are terrible.
So do Tuesday August 28th for another budget workshop?
The question will be, are they in town? I know Ferranti will not be back till the 30th.
Mm-hmm.
Will you have a quorum?
We'll make it tentative till we get some feedback from the other two.
On the 28th?
Yes. Looks like that's the only day it's really going to work.
Mm-hmm. 6 o'clock?
Yeah, 6 o'clock. And we have a CRA meeting is the Thursday, the 13th?
Second Thursday, right,
The
13th.
13th. And we'll set the budget for the CRA, I guess, for the final budget on the 19th.
On the what? Oh, okay. 13th?
Yeah, 13th CRA. So. Okay, we done here?
Is there any problem with notification if we have the workshop? It says it's just a workshop on the 28th, Lenore?
You have to have a 24-hour notice.
Okay.
So is that tentative or that's,
It's a tentative. You have to have a physical 3 governing body quorum present. So Skype does not count with the quorum.
well, you'll be here. You'll be in person, right?
It should be.
Okay. Okay. We'll set it for the 28th of August.
Lloyd should be too, I think.
Okay, let's go home. This meeting's adjourned.
Oh, late. Probably.